that thank you for that introduction, Ms. Paila. First and foremost, I would like to thank the officers and members of the Circle of Public Administration and Governance students of the College of Political Science and Public Administration of my beloved alma mater, the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, for making us part of this local governance forum. I would also like to acknowledge and welcome the students and learners from the other universities. And I want to say hi to my partner and my constant co-speaker when it comes to the discussion of the Supreme Court decision on the Mandanas-Garcia case, Director Liza Bonagua of the DILG. So next slide, please. Oh, may I request the host to allow my colleague to share a copy of my presentation? There you go. So my discussion will cover the background of the Supreme Court decision on the Mandanas-Garcia case, which will cover also the background on the manner on how we compute the then internal revenue allotment shares of the LGUs, as already explained in the inspirational message of Dr. Umali, and the corresponding fiscal implications posed by the Supreme Court decision on both the national government and the local government units. Next slide. Okay, so the shares of the local government units in the national taxes is a constitutional share. It is provided under Section 6, Article 10 of the 1987 Constitution. Under that provision of the 1987 Constitution, the local government units shall have a just share as determined by law in the national taxes, which shall be automatically released to them. If we dissect this provision under the 1987 Constitution, we can say that the operative words are, number one, that the LGUs shall have a just share as determined by law. And when you say determined by law, you are referring to the power of Congress to enact the law, since the Congress under the 1987 Constitution has the legislative power. So the determination of the just share of the LGUs in the national taxes is vested in the Congress of the Philippines. And the just share of the LGUs shall be automatically released to them. When you say automatically released to the local government units, meaning the national government cannot impose any condition or require any documentary requirement for the release of the share of the local government units. So since it is the Congress that is mandated to determine the just share of the LGUs in the national taxes, the Congress, by virtue of Republic Act number 7160 or the Local Government Code of 1991, determined the just share of the local government units in Section 284 of the Local Government Code. So in Section 284, it is provided therein that the local government units shall have a 40% share in the national internal revenue taxes based on the collection of the third fiscal year preceding the current fiscal year. So what does that mean? Under the 1987 Constitution, what was mentioned is that the just share of LGUs should be based on the national taxes. But when the Congress enacted the Local Government Code of 1991, they confined the share of the LGUs only to national internal revenue taxes. So there is a disconnect between the provision under the 1987 Constitution and the manner on how the Congress implemented that provision under the Constitution. So because of that provision under the Local Government Code of 1991, then Congressman Hermelando Mandanas, who is now the provincial governor of the province of Batangas, and the late Governor Enrique Garcia, the province of Bataan, filed separate petitions assailing the constitutionality of Section 284 of the Local Government Code of 1991. So what part of their petition is to direct the national government to change the basic is in the computation of the just share of government units from national internal revenue taxes only to national taxes as provided under the 1987 Constitution. So in 2018, the Supreme Court rendered its ruling on those two petitions of Governor Garcia and Governor Mandanas. So those two petitions were consolidated by the Supreme Court. And the 2018 decision of the Supreme Court, which was rendered final and executory in 2019, ruled that the just share of the LGUs from the national taxes is internal revenue. But it also includes the customs duties collected by the Bureau of Customs and other collecting agencies. Now, what will be the implication of this? So, the implication is shown graphically on this slide. So the left pie chart shows the basis in the computation of the era before the Supreme Court ruling, and the bigger pie is the national taxes, and a subset of it is the national internal revenue taxes. And consistent with the sharing formula under Section 284 of the Local Government Code of 1991, 40% goes to the local government units as their era, and the 60% is left to the national government. But after the Mandanas ruling is implemented, as shown on the right pie chart, we can see that the basis of computation of the era, which will now be referred to as national tax allotment starting 2022, is expanded already from national internal revenue taxes only to all national taxes, which effectively means expansion of resources transferred from the national government to the local government units. So once we say that there will be a fiscal implication, now what will be the nominal figures? Well, on this slide, we are trying to show the actual fiscal implication of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas-Garcia case in fiscal year 2022, which, as mentioned by Dr. O'Malley, is the pilot year of the implementation of the ruling. Essentially, the LGUs will receive an increase of 185.17 billion as the fiscal impact of the Mandanas-Garcia ruling. So, without the Supreme Court ruling, meaning if we will continue basing the share of the local government units to national internal revenue taxes only, the era shares of LGUs will only be around 773.87 billion. But with the change in the tax base in the computation, meaning when we use all national taxes in the computation, it will climb up to 959.04 billion. So the difference of those two figures without the Supreme Court ruling and with the Supreme Court ruling is around 185.17 billion. Now, on a year-on-year expansion from 695.49 billion to 959.04 billion, is a difference of around 263.50. So year-on-year expansion yon from 2021 to 2022. And this was noted by Dr. O'Malley in his inspirational message. This is equivalent to around 37.89 billion peso increase from 2021 to 2022. Now, when you say fiscal implication, what does that mean? Fiscal implication means this 185.17 billion is the increase in the NPA shares of the LGUs. Correspondingly, this will result to a tantamount decrease in the fiscal resources available to the national government. So we are merely transferring resources here. The implementation of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas-Garcia case will not result to an increase in the overall basket of financial resources of the entire government. But we are merely transferring this certain amount of money, this certain amount of financial resources from the national government to the local government units. And that is equivalent to 185.17 billion pesos in 2022. Okay. So since we are talking about one basket of financial resources of the national government, the national government will have to find a measure on how to cushion or mitigate the fiscal impact of the Mandanas ruling. Okay? So, parang sa kanya-kanyang household natin yan. Kapag nabawasan yung income ng family, ano yung ginagawa natin? Either mangungutang tayo, which in the national government is usually referred to as yung fiscal deficit sa isang mga resort natin to address the fiscal deficit, pangutang. Diba? And the second measure na ina-adapt natin sa household is to lessen expenditures. So kung yung mga gastusin mo sa bahay, nakaalat for rental, for education, for food, etc., kailangan bawasan mo yon para kung ano man yung kabawasan sa iyong income ay mamitigate mo or magkakaroon ka ng cushion. Kumbaga, ma-address mo yung problema na yon. And that was what was implemented by the national government. So we have to lessen the expenditures of the national government by devolving certain functions of the national government agencies to the local government units. So, is it in accordance with the law to fully devolve the services and functions to the local government units? Well, the answer is a yes. Kasi the functions and services that we are devolving are consistent with the expenditure assignments of the local government units under the Local Government Code of 1991. So we are not devolving new services and functions to the LGUs, but we are merely fully implementing the provisions of the Local Government Code with respect to the mandates of the local government units. So kung babasahin ninyo yung Section 17B of the Local Government Code of 1991, the specific mandates and functions and services and facilities that should be delivered by the local government units are clearly provided. However, after the implementation of the Local Government Code of 1991, many of these functions and services which fall within the expenditure assignments of the LGUs were continuously implemented by certain national government agencies because of the lack of technical capacity and financial capability of the local government units to implement them. But with the implementation of the Mandanas ruling, wherein on the average, the LGUs will get an increase of around 37.89% from their 2021 era level, it should be expected from the LGUs that they will now be primarily responsible for the delivery of the devolved services and functions as provided under the Local Government Code of 1991 and other pertinent laws. Now, the main intention of this full devolution is to ensure fiscal sustainability. Meaning, if the national government will continue to provide for these functions and services and with the same revenues that we have, then fiscal deficit will increase. So kapag mas mataas yung fiscal deficit natin, para mapunan yung fiscal deficit na yon, we will again resort to borrowing. And as you know, nababalitaan nyo naman po sa news ngayon na yung Pilipinas as a result of the restrictions on the mobility of the general public due to COVID-19, which effectively limited yung mga economic activities natin, naapektuhan yung revenues of the national government. And on the expenditure side, lumaki naman yung gastusin natin, especially in the public health sector. Kasi nga, this is an unprecedented pandemic. So, now with the implication of this Mandanas ruling, hindi natin i-afford na i-continue pa yung mga services na yon. So what we did is to already devolve the services to the local government units to ensure fiscal sustainability. Now on for the LGUs, they should see this as a measure that will further strengthen their local fiscal autonomy because they will no longer be dependent on what the national government can provide to them. So the LGUs that may still be dependent on the national government are only those LGUs that do not have the fiscal resources. So I am referring to the local government units, mostly those belonging to lower classifications. For the LGUs that are already considered financially capable, then dapat sila na talaga yung magbigay ng mga serbisyo at mga function na to na nakaatang sa kanila under the Local Government Code of 1991. Next slide. Okay, so to fully implement the full devolution, the national government agencies, referring this as the oversight is the DBM, the DILG, the DOF, and the National Economic and Development Authority prepared an executive order, and the same executive order was submitted to the President in January of 2021. So the executive order directing the full devolution of certain functions and services from the national government to the local government units was approved by the President by virtue of Executive Order number 138. And the corresponding implementing rules and regulations has already issued by the Committee on Devolution. Next slide. So these are the salient features of the Executive Order number 138. The first salient feature is the clear delineation of the functions and services of the national government and the local government units. The second salient feature is the preparation of devolution transition plan, both by the national government agencies and the local government units. Then we also have the creation of a committee on devolution and the establishment of a growth equity fund. Next slide. Okay, we also have the capacity building programs for the local government units, the roles of LGUs in the implementation of this full devolution effort, and the strengthening of planning, investment programming, and budgeting linkage, as well as the institutionalization of a monitoring and evaluation system, and the options for the personnel of national government agencies that may be affected by the devolution. As a policy of decentralization, the national government is committed to develop the capabilities of the local government units to enable them to deliver the basic services and facilities, and to ensure the accountability, competence, professionalism, and transparency of local leaders. Of course, this can be done through the development of institutional systems that uphold good governance and strengthen the capacities and capabilities of the local leaders in managing public resources. Next slide. Now, when it comes to the guiding principles of devolution, all department secretaries and heads of the national government agencies shall conduct a functional and organizational review of their respective mandates, and they should be guided by these principles as shown on your slide. On this slide, number one is that the role of the national government is to set the national policy, the development strategy, and service delivery standards, and they should assist, oversee, and supervise the local government units. Now, what does this mean? The national government agencies, from being the primary in charge of the delivery of these devolved functions and services, they should now shift from rowing to steering. So part of the steering functions of the national government Okay. May I request all the participants to put your microphone on silent mode so as not to disturb the proceedings of this forum. Thank you. Okay, so that's the first guiding principle of devolution. The second one is that the devolution of basic services and facilities to the local government units and the determination of the functional assignments between and among the different levels of LGUs should be guided by certain principles. The first principle is that the public services with little or no benefit spillover should be best administered and financed by the lower level of local governments. And the provision of public goods and services that involve economies of scale should be best assigned to the higher levels of government. Now, when you say economies of scale, what do you mean? Economies of scale means that the national government or the government as a whole will benefit if certain goods and services are purchased or procured in bulk. Like for example, sa medicines. Sa pag-procure ng medicines, mas makakamura yung gobyerno kung mas marami yung bibilhin. Now, if you will devolve that function, the purchase of medicine to a lower level of government, mas mamamahalan yung gobyerno. So if you will procure that through a larger scale or the larger level, then the tendency of procuring those commodities at a lower price will be higher. Kasi nga, the higher the volume of the commodities that you procure, the lower of the price that may be imposed by the suppliers. So that's what we mean when we say when the services and public goods involve economies of scale, they should be assigned to a higher level of government. Then the third guiding principle is that the national government, in close coordination with the local government units, shall formulate and pursue an institutional development program for the local government units. And any ambiguity as to the interpretation of the full devolution shall be resolved and interpreted in favor of the full devolution effort as espoused under Executive Order number 138. Next slide. What's the coverage of the executive order and which agencies and LGUs are covered? So under Executive Order number 138, the functions, basic services, and facilities have been involved to the local government units should be covered by the executive order. And the local government units shall be primarily and ultimately responsible and accountable for the provision of all basic services and facilities. All local government units are covered here. And the only exemption are the local government units in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Maslim, Mindanao. So yung mga nasa BARM area, hindi po sila kasama dito. Now you may ask me, why did you not include the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Maslim, Mindanao in the coverage of Executive Order number 138? The reason is that the power to regulate the affairs of the local government units within the Bangsamoro is within the powers of the Bangsamoro regional government. Therefore, in the preparation of the executive order, as well as the subsequent guidelines issued by the Committee on Devolution and other national government agencies, we excluded the LGUs in the Bangsamoro in the coverage of Executive Order number 138. Next slide. The second component of the Executive Order number 138 is the preparation of the devolution transition plans, both by the national government agencies and the local government units. The DBM and the DILG have issued two separate circulars providing for the guidelines on the preparation of the LGU devolution transition plan and the devolution transition plan of national government agencies. Now, why did we require the national government agencies and the local government units to prepare in a broad manner is to ensure the smooth implementation of the devolution transition effort para mailatag ng mga national government agency yung proyekto at aktibidad that they will now phase out or scale down as a result of this full devolution effort. So nakalagay sa mga devolution transition plan ng agencies, ng national government agencies, yung detalye kung paano nila gradually ibababa yon sa mga local government units. Now, on the part of the local government units, yes, they are also mandated to prepare their respective devolution transition plans. And the essence, the main essence of the devolution transition plan of the local government units is to ascertain that whatever program, project, or activity that may be discontinued or scaled down or phased out by the national government agency will be continued by the local government unit concerned. So yun po yung intention natin. There should be an alignment between the devolution transition plan of the national government agencies and the local government units. So magbababa yung NGAs, on the part of the LGUs, dapat nakalatag din kung paano nila sasaluhin yon. So in the next slides, we will discuss the features of devolution transition plans of the LGUs and the NGAs. Now let's go first to the LGUDTP. These are the contents of the LGUDT. The first one is the statement of the devolved function, services, and facilities. the phasing of assumption of the full devolution, the capacity development requirements, the organizational structure and staffing pattern, the local revenue forecast and resource mobilization strategy, and the performance targets for devolved functions and services. I think I have to reserve muna yung discussion on this slide. Direct na may discuss yung mga components po na to. Ano-anong ibig sabihin ng component ng LGU devolution transition plan. So let's leave this to Director Ana later on. For the national government agencies, ito naman po yung content ng kanilang devolution transition plan. The first one is the strategic direction and shifts. So this component of the devolution transition plan of the national government agency will lay out the strategic vision of what the department, agency, or government-owned and or controlled corporation, for that matter, should or intends to do, considering the changes in its work as a result of the full devolution of certain functions it is currently performing to the local government units. So dapat yung strategy nila in shifting their focus and mandate in observance of the full devolution effort should be clearly laid out in the devolution transition plan under this content or component, yung strategic direction and shifts. Second is the assignment of functions, services, and facilities to each level of government. So this portion of the DTP of the National Government Agency will identify the appropriate assignment of functions, services, and facilities to each level of government and determine the specific level of LGU wherein these functions and services have been or can be devolved and transferred to based on the local government code of 1981 and other relevant laws. So the implementation strategy and the phasing of the devolution transition activities subject to the capacity and resources of the LGUs to take on these devolved functions and services should be clearly laid out based on the experiences and assessment of the national government agency when it was still performing these devolved functions and services. Third is the service delivery standards. Ano yung ibig sabihin ng service delivery standards? So this will include the identification and inventory of standards for the delivery of devolved services, which should cover the minimum cost, the scope of the services to be delivered, the specifications and the quality of services to be delivered by the local government units according to hierarchy of the LGU. So why is it important for us to ensure that the national government agencies will include the service delivery standards that should be followed by the LGUs? This is to ascertain that when the LGUs are already implementing these basic services and facilities, they still comply with the standards is public financial management government to manner on how they implement programs and projects are consistent with standards prescribed by the national government. Kasi hindi pwedeng kanya-kanyang standard. Like for example, sa infrastructure. Sino ba yung infrastructure arm of the government? It is the DPWH. So when it comes to the delivery by the local government units of infrastructure services, they should comply with the standards prescribed by the infrastructure arm, which is the DPWH. Now, when it comes to health, hindi naman tayo kanya-kanya dapat ng health standard. Kahit may fiscal autonomy or may administrative autonomy yung mga local government units, hindi sila pwede magkaroon ng kanilang standards. It should be based on the standards of the health department of the national government, which is the DOH. Now, when it comes to social welfare, dapat yung DSWD rin. And for labor and employment, we have the DOLE. So, bawat ahensya ng national government, meron silang mandate, and in their devolution transition plan, they should prescribe the service delivery standards, which in turn should be used by the LGUs as basis in determining the service delivery standards for the implementation of their of the devolved functions and services. Next slide. Another component of the NGA-DTP is the LGU capacity development strategy. So why is it important to include this? Well, of course, the local government unit be used to implement these services and functions. And they may not be technically will be technically able to implement the services and functions. Meron po tayong capacity development strategy which should be included by the national government agencies in their devolution transition plan. On the part of the local government units, they are also mandated to prepare their respective capacity development agenda. So again, dalawa rin po yun na dapat in harmony or may nakasynchronize. Yung capacity development strategy ng NGA at dapat capacity development agenda rin yung LGU. That is to that technically able to implement the framework. So the systems and mechanisms, whether existing or new, monitoring and performance assessment of the local government units in undertaking the devolved functions, including the possibility of imposing sanctions cited by pertinent laws, and yung carrot approach natin, the provision of incentives shall be developed and shared with the local government units concerned. Then we also have the organization and effectiveness proposal. So this will include the necessary organizational changes in the national government agencies concerned as a result of the possible downsizing of their personnel as a result of the devolution of certain basic services and functions. Okay, so the submission of this devolution transition plan under the executive order should be 120 days after the effectivity of the EO. And this deadline has already last September 21. And so far, the Department of Budget and Management has already received submissions from national government agencies. So out of these 16 submissions, 15 are official and 1 is just a preliminary submission. And we are still awaiting for the submission of 4 agencies as shown on your screen. Next slide. Okay, so to ensure that there will be an oversight body to implement the Mandanas-Garcia ruling, the executive order also created the Committee on Devolution. And this Committee on Devolution is co-chaired by the DBM Secretary and the DILG Secretary. And among the members are the secretaries of NEDA, or the National Economic and Development Authority, the Department of Finance, and the Executive Secretary as members. Well, the LGUs are also well represented in this Committee on Devolution. The presidents of the different leagues of LGUs, the League of Provinces, League of Cities, League of Municipalities, as well as the Liga ng mga Barangay and the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines are members. So there are 5 representatives from the national government agencies and 5 representatives from the local government units in the Committee on Devolution. Now, the main function of this Committee on Devolution is to resolve issues and concerns that may arise in the implementation of the full devolution effort, and also to oversee the implementation of the devolution transition. So when it comes to the evaluation of the status and the monitoring of the implementation of the devolution transition plan of the LGUs, the overseeing and monitoring of the implementation of administrative and fiscal decentralization, the elimination of any regulatory or fiscal control in the automatic release of the shares of LGUs in the national taxes, the adoption of mechanisms to ensure the continuous delivery of public services. Next slide. The development of a strong communications plan, the issuance of the implementing rules and regulations of the executive order, and the submission of report to the Office of the President are among the functions of this committee. So this is a very good body to oversee the implementation of the full devolution. So kung magkaroon naman problema man, both yung national government agency or LGU, nandiyan yung COMDEV to resolve whatever problem, issue, or concern that may arise in the full devolution efforts. Next slide. Next is the establishment of a growth equity fund. Now, this growth equity fund is a product of our consultation meetings with the local government units. Now, why do we have this growth equity fund? This growth equity fund will be provided by the national government to certain local government units. And so, when we were still crafting the then draft executive order, some LGUs represented that not all LGUs are created equal. There are rich local government units and there are those LGUs that are considered poor who cannot provide even the most basic services and facilities. So to gradually enable the poor local government units to implement the full devolution transition policy, we established this growth equity fund under Executive Order number 138. And subsequently, the Congress, by virtue of the 2022 General Appropriations Act, included an amount of 1.25 billion for this growth equity fund, which is intended to address the problem of marginalization, unequal development, high poverty incidence, and disparity in the net fiscal capacities of the local government units with respect to the implementation of the default functions and services. Next slide. Okay, so this is the amount. It's 1.25. Next slide. Okay, I have mentioned already that part of the devolution transition plans of the national government agencies is the capacity development strategy for the local government units. Now, for the local government units naman, they are mandated to prepare their capacity development agenda, which shall be formulated based on the assessment framework and guidelines to be issued by the local government academy. So we have these agencies that will be at the forefront in helping the local government units in their capacity development efforts. First is the Local Government Academy, which is under the DILG. So the Local Government Academy is expected to harmonize and oversee the provision of the needed capacity development interventions of the local government units. On the part of the Development Academy of the Philippines, they are expected to strengthen the capabilities of the local chief executives. So presently, the Development Academy of the Philippines is implementing its local government executives and managers course, which is intended to capacitate the local executives and other managers and leaders in the local government units. And the course that they offer basically zeroes in sa procedures, guidelines, policies in running the local government unit. So we have the DAP as a partner in the capacity development for local government units. Then we also have the Bureau of Local Government Finance when it comes to the conduct of programs regarding revenue generation and fiscal management. Next slide. So these are the specific roles of local government units in the full devolution effort. Number one is the preparation of the LGU devolution transition plan, which I have discussed earlier and will be discussed further by Director Anna. Then the capacity development agenda, as I have discussed in the previous slide, and the development of communications plan and strategy. Now, why is it important for the local government units to develop communications plan and strategy? The implementation of the full devolution will shift the responsibility of providing basic services from the national government to the local government units. Now, every program and project being implemented by the national government has its beneficiaries. Like for example, sa DSWD, yung mga social services ng DSWD, mayroong mga beneficiaries yan. Now, if the DSWD will no longer implement that specific program, or if it will scale down or phase out that specific program and transfer the responsibility to the LGU, the beneficiaries of those programs will ask, to which government entity will we now demand the delivery of those services? So in the communications plan and strategy, we should be able to tell the public, make the general public aware and informed that the delivery of these basic services as part of the full devolution effort are now within the functions of the local government units. So the delivery of these services and functions should already be demanded from the local government units and not anymore from the national government agencies, specifically for those that have already been fully devolved. Now, if there are still functions and services which are still continuously being implemented by the national government for one reason or another, like for example, when the local government unit does not have the technical capability to do so, or when the services are inadequately provided by the local government unit concerned sa national government, but generally dapat sa LGUs na po yan tingin, and that should be part of the communications plan and strategy. Next slide. Okay, so the communications plan and strategy of the local government unit should be made consistent with the communications plan and strategy of the national government. So this communications plan and strategy, both by the national government and LGUs, shall formulate and develop their respective communications plan, which are aligned and complementary to the national communications strategy. Next slide. As part of the, next slide please. Yung sa planning and investment programming muna. The previous slide, okay. Now, as part of the strengthening of the vertical and horizontal linkages across the different levels of government in development planning, investment programming, and budgeting, as well as the reinforcement of results-based monitoring and evaluation systems in the national government agencies, the executive order also highlights the importance of planning at the regional level, and the role of the regional development councils in this particular endeavor cannot be overemphasized, especially in setting the strategic direction for the faster development of the regions, especially those in the lagging areas, and in facilitating the alignment of the local development plans and land use plans of the local government units with the goals, objectives, and targets of the national government as reflected in the updated Philippine Development Plan and respective regional development plans of every region. Again, the results-based monitoring and evaluation system shall also be in place and strengthened to ensure the purposive conduct of evaluation in the performance and delivery of the devolved services and functions by the local government units. Next slide. Okay, so we also have the options for the affected personnel. Next slide. Now, what do we mean by options for affected personnel? If the national government agencies will scale down or face certain programs, projects, and activities which will be devolved to the local government units, yung mga tao na nag-implement dito sa national government agencies may be affected, di ba? Like for example, yung DSWD, meron silang social services will be transferred to the local government units. Yung social service ng DSWD, meron mga personnel na nag-implement noon. Di ba? Meron mga tao sila. It can be permanent personnel, or they can be JO, or they can be job order, or they can be contract of service personnel. If the DSWD will no longer implement that, what will now happen to those personnel? So the options for those personnel are these three options shown on your screen. The first one, to the extent authorized by civil service laws, rules, and regulations, the personnel hired on a permanent basis who may be affected by the full devolution efforts shall have the option to transfer to the other units or offices within the agency to which they presently belong. So kung nasa DSWD sila ngayon, pwedeng lumipat sila sa ibang offices or divisions or units in the DSWD where their services are needed or required. Another option is they can transfer to the other offices or departments within the executive branch. So from DSWD, they can transfer to, say, Department of Agriculture or Department of Health or Department of Labor, kusang kailangan din yung kanilang serbisyo. And the third option that they can avail is to avail the retirement benefits and separation incentives as provided under the executive order. And subject to the discretion of the local government units concerned, they can apply to vacant positions in the LGU, provided that their reemployment shall be considered as a new entry to the civil service, and they shall be subject to the compensation system implemented by the local government unit that may have them. Now, contrary to the common misconception, the national government agencies will not mandatorily devolve personnel to local government units. So ito po yung options nila, at hindi kasama dyan yung mandatory transfer of personnel sa local government units. They can transfer to the LGUs, but it should be subject to the mutual agreement between the transferee, between the personnel and the local government unit. Kung ayaw po silang i-absorb ng LGU, hindi naman yun mangyayari. Okay? So dapat gusto rin silang i-absorb ng mga LGU at gusto rin lumipat ng tao dun sa LGU. Now, these options are applicable sa mga permanent personnel. Okay? What will now happen to the contract of service personnel? Ito yung mga personnel in the government that are not covered by the security of tenure under the Constitution. So their engagement with the government is governed by their contract with the government. Okay, so yung contract of service, merong kontrata yan na pinirmahan ng head of the agency and the personnel concerned. So govern sila ng contract nila. Once their contract expires, so tapos na rin yung engagement nila with the government. Now, hindi naman natin basta-basta pwedeng pabayaan din yung mga contract of service personnel. Kasi kawawa naman kung mawawala sila ng trabaho. So, what we can now do and what we are now doing actually is to list this personnel, this contract of service and job order personnel of the National Government Agency. And eventually, we will share the list of this personnel with the local government units, so that the local government units will have the option to hire the personnel which they think will be a contributor to the or in the implementation of the devolved services and other functions of the local government unit. Well, the LGUs may benefit from the experience and technical expertise of this personnel. It can be a win-win scenario. So yun po yung ginagawa namin ngayon sa mga affected personnel for the permanent and contract of service personnel. And I think this is the last part of my slide. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Director Macaspac.
Carlin, your mic, it's off. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, Director Macaspac, for that enlightening discussion. An e-certificate will be sent to your email after the webinar. Thank you once again.
To give us his insights from what Director Macaspac has shared with us, he is part of the faculty in the PUP's College of Political Science and Public Administration, the advisor of our academic organization for the Bachelor in Public Administration, the Circle of Public Administration and Governance Students, CPAGS, and has attained a Master in Public Administration, major in Local Governance and Regional Administration. May we please call on Professor Kier B. Franco.
Thank you, Paila. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you here.
I'll just go straight to my comments and reaction because I don't have a presentation. So first, let me thank Director John Aries Macaspac. Thank you, sir, for giving us your time and explaining the very timely Mandanas-Garcia ruling and some of the important points under the Executive Order 138. Allow me to highlight important points on the full devolution plan and also integrate the insights shared by Director Macaspac. So this year marks the start of the implementation of the full devolution, and I think it is also timely because we will be electing our new national and local officials, right? So I think as students and scholars of PA, political science, and as a registered voter, you also might want to look at the platforms of the candidates in the local elections, of course, having in mind the implementation of the full devolution plan this year. Why is Mandanas-Garcia ruling important? You see, part of the strategies in the holistic development is the involvement and cooperation of all the important sectors that comprise entire governance sphere. And one of those sectors is the local government unit. So we acknowledge this fact, first and foremost, it is inscribed in our constitution, right? Borrowing the opening paragraph in the Supreme Court ruling in Congressman Mandana's petition, one of the key features of the 1987 Constitution is its push towards decentralization and local autonomy. And the Constitution states also Director Macaspac under Article 10, Section 6, that local government revenue government. So it is why in the ruling, she agreed that the computation of the national internal revenue taxes should include many other sources that were previously discounted. So if you want to know more about those uh, new additions, no, you might want to look at the SE ruling. No? Now, the ruling can be interpreted as a mere increase of funding to the local government units, right? But it is easy on paper, but there might be complexities when we try to enforce the same. The fiscal implementation, as discussed by Director Macaspac, will increase funds to the local government units and a significant decrease to the national government fiscal resource, right? And this will therefore means that there will be more funding for crisis response, so we can realize projects like building back better and quick response mechanisms with the aid of new technology available and affordable, cases like Typhoon Odette and Yolanda. Ideally, the increased funding will also allow new elected officials to focus on pandemic response proactively and not reactively, as they can now fund certain mitigating mechanisms to minimize local transmission of the virus, enhancement of health facilities, installed positive reinforcement to encourage vaccination, fast and easy way of vaccination and testing, new technology for contact tracing and monitoring, and of course, the distribution of ayuda. And you also have the concept of job insurance now, right? There's something new. But I think this is another important and interesting thing to look at, right? Um, what is the role of the local government units when the local citizens are abruptly became unemployed or OFWs suddenly sent home by their employers? It may be part of the default function for the national agency, so it is really something that is worthy of giving attention to. They can also use the increase in funding for important bureaucratic reforms, such as provision of e-services and those e-governance mechanisms to fast-track local bureaucratic processes. And of course, the increase in funding is ideally will improve global and local competence of local government units in terms of service delivery, literacy, benchmarking, research, infrastructure. So this is a good step forward towards localization, no? And erase the long-standing high era dependence of middle income to low income class local government units. So let me share to you some areas of concern, no? During the early years of implementation of the full devolution plan, as also discussed by John Macaspac. The need for their national government agencies to no longer duplicate the programs, activities, and projects to be transferred to local government unit. But this will result in government employees losing their current roles to be transferred to local government units, right? But I think the DBM and the partner institutions have already a solution on this one, as shared also by Director Macaspac by providing options for affected personnel. But of course, this is something that we should enforce properly. Do not deprive employment without just cause to workers in the national government agencies whose work will become redundant due to the full devolution order. In fact, I am personally interested about the fate of the contractual employees, sir, no? Because I was once part of the contractual employees in the national government agency. So another important concern is that can I request the organizer to please mute the, okay, thank you. Another important concern is that the capacity of local government units in spending the increased budget and executing the plans identified within the fiscal year might not be enough. This is one of the concerns in the early years of transition because the devolved functions from the national government agencies might be something new to the local government units, particularly those which are highly technical in nature. So the mandate from the General Appropriations Act, the Executive Order 138, and the IRR might take some time to fully realize. And the intention of the policies, of course, which is for the devolution, and this might result to spending mismatch or underspending. That's why, according to the figure provided by ADB and World Bank, underspending by LGUs this year, as not they been as they had not been equipped to roll out projects of a much bigger scale compared to what they handled at present, is likely to happen. For instance, the estimated amount is 155 billion for the fiscal year 2022. So as we have been reiterating in public administration discussions, underspending is equals to underperformance. And this is really something that we should work on as we go our way towards full devolution. From the presentation of Director Macaspac, it is good to know that the national government agencies, together with the local government units, had met together as to the extent of the devolved functions and the strategies on how to implement them, as well as to the delivery standards. No? So I hope the students will take note of that. Okay, another key concern is the mandate funding mismatch. No? Although the devolved functions and services are still anchored with the local government unit, as mentioned by Director Macaspac in the pertinent, these functional services might still be overwhelming for the local government units, especially those middle to lower income classes. So we are expecting that the additional funding of the local government units will improve their respective implementations of their mandates, and they will no longer be forced to do more with less. They have yet to fully know how much will be spent in the new functions devolved to them, although they can estimate the additional funding might not be enough to cover the same. And there are concerns rather that the full devolution might be another story of another mandate. But we are assuring it will not be like that. In terms of account years where most cases filed before the office of the ombudsman were against local government officials. And according to a 2021 study, most complaints were sent by local officials with more money at the expense of the local population. So it would be better as students, scholars, teachers, and practitioners of public administration to focus on the following narratives about ways to move forward with the Mandanas ruling, as shared also by Director Macaspac. No? Increasing capacity and competence of the local government units, avoiding traps and pitfalls, learning from past mistakes, and increased anti-corruption and accountability mechanism. That is why we thank sincerely Director Macaspac for sharing to us that the national government agencies have plans to capacitate the local government units and increase their investment capabilities and improve monitoring and evaluation of the functions. And I think the guiding principles shared also by Director, aiming to set the direction to properly implement the full devolution are also encouraging. It is also good to know that the efforts to align and realign local government unit functions to national policies and fiscal and development targets are ensured through various mechanisms such as the creation of devolution committee. Furthermore, the growth equity fund sounds promising as well to ensure the equity and balance in terms of capacity of local government units to fund devolved functions. So as students, I encourage you to take part in ensuring the good plans of the national government agencies together with the local government units to make sure that these will be enforced efficiently and effectively. So overall, the Mandanas-Garcia ruling and the EO 138 and relevant laws aiming for full devolution manifest good steps forward toward decentralization. So as I end, I would like to share to you how Justice Bersamin defined decentralization in the Mandanas-Garcia ruling. No? He said decentralization of power involves the abdication of political power in favor of the autonomous local government units as to grant them the freedom to chart their own destinies and to shape their futures with minimum intervention from the central government. This amounts to self-immolation because the autonomous local government units thereby become accountable not to the central authorities but to their constituencies. Once again, on behalf of the College of Political Science and Public Administration, we thank you, Director John Aries Macaspac, for your time. Thank you also to CPAGS and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Sir Kier, for those wonderful and informative insights. We are sure to bear that in mind. So earlier, the Executive Order number 138 Mandanas ruling and the local government units were discussed using the public financial management point of view. However, the next discussion will shed light with the same discourse but in an administrative perspective. This next speaker is the director of the Bureau of Local Government Development under the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or the DILG. She is the head secretariat of the DILG Transition Management Committee, or the TMC, which was created to mobilize efforts of the department in preparing for and in facilitating LGU transition to full devolution in line with the implementation of Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas-Garcia petitions in fiscal year 2022. She also leads the implementation of different projects supported by the UNDP, ADB, World Bank, GIZ, UNICEF, and AusAid. She holds a bachelor's degree in statistics and a master's degree of public administration, major in local and regional government from the University of the Philippines. May we extend an arm to Director Analia F. Bonagua.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat sa PUP for inviting the ILG to this Sipat, Suri, Siyasat, a local governance forum. And magandang hapon po din kay Sir Dean of the College of Political Science and Public Administration, Dean Antonius Umali, and the entire Circle for Public Administration and Governance student. I was once a member of public administration students. Director Aries Macaspac, ang aking partner sa briefing on devolution transition plan, devolution by Mandanas ruling. And to Miss Georgina Hernandez-Yang and to Dexter, Arvin. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Na-discuss na ni Director Aries yung tungkol sa mga overview of the Mandanas ruling and some of the policies of the government. So I'll be focusing my presentation on the impact of the Mandanas ruling to local government units and what we are currently doing to support, assist local government units as they transition. And this year is the start of the transition until 2024. No, binigyan sila ng 3 taon to fully transition to full devolution. Okay, I'll start with the implication of the Supreme Court ruling. Okay, simula, actually napasadahan ni Director Aries, pero gusto ko lang i-emphasize yung una, the fiscal impact of the Supreme Court ruling, of course, positive for local government units because they will have increased resources, which we are now calling national tax allotment, because we are considering all national taxes to be the basis of the shares of local government units, hindi lang internal revenue taxes. So that's the reason why ang laki ng increase nila for 2022, 37.89% increase, because it already included all national taxes, no? Which has been the basis for the longest time since 1992 hanggang itong 2021. The basis of the share of local government units were just internal revenue taxes. Dahil lalaki ang share ng local government unit, syempre kukuhanin yan sa isang total collection lang naman ng Philippine government. So mababawasan ang share ng national government. So there will be a negative fiscal impact on the national government disposable cash for starting 2022. Okay, so next, in the next slide, we just like to show you here that while there will be an increase starting 2022, there might probably be a decrease, or sigurado na yata kasi alam na natin yung collection by 2020. The shares of local government units is based on the 3rd preceding year. So ibig sabihin, yung 2022 shares ng local government is based on the collection of the national government in 2019. And the 2023, FY 2023 share of local government is based on the collection of 2020. And the same way 2024 based on 2021 collection. And in view of COVID-19, alam natin, maraming nagsarang negosyo, maraming nawalan ng trabaho, at nalimitahan ang business activity. So bumaba din ang collection ng national government. So bumaba ang tax collection ng national government. No, we don't know yet the exact amount, but we already know that it will decrease by 2023. It will also have an impact somehow in 2024 kasi while the situation improve in 2021, no, meron pa rin tayong sporadic lockdowns at saka yung mga maliliit na lockdowns in some areas. So meron pa ring impact, hindi pa rin fully recover ang ating mga businesses and the business activities and the livelihood of our people in the community. Okay, and then we made some simulation of the amount that local government units will be receiving as as part of the impact of the Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court ruling did not touch the distribution formula for each level of local government units. So the 82 provinces will be still receiving 23% of the NTA. The 146 cities will receive the same 23% NTA, while the 1,499 municipalities will receive 34%, and the remaining 20% will be shared by around 42,000 barangays. So kung makita nyo dun sa graph, pinapakita lang dito the distribution for share of each level of government, cities, municipality will still be lang yung pie from which they will share it with the local government units within each level. And we did some estimation on the average NTA per level of local government units. So as we can see here, provincial government on an average, no, pwedeng bumaba o lumiit, lumaki, lumiit, depending on the size of the local government and in terms of population and land area. So on the average, provinces will be receiving around 2.69 billion pesos. And the the cities will be receiving 1.511 billion pesos. While the municipalities will be receiving 200 million pesos, and the barangays ay 5 million pesos. So from here, we can already see the capacity of each level of local government to deliver the services that are given them, or the devolved services that are assigned to them by the local government code and other laws that were passed after the local government code. Okay, the next slide. So there will be an increase in the resources of local government units. As we all know, no, lagi sinasabi natin, budget should follow function. However, there are statutory obligations, there are provisions in law that either limit, ensure expenditures for certain priority areas or sector. For example, yung 20% development fund, which is the 20% of the internal revenue allotment. So now it will be 20% of the NTA, which should be devoted for development projects or development activities by local government units. Although DBM and DILG have already issued the latest policy on the use of the 20% development fund to really be used for delivering devolved services and priority projects of the local government units, not limited to investment and capital expenditure, as shown here in yung policy of the DILG and DBM 2017. So there is now a new release policy, which is 2021-1, governing the use of the 20% development fund. We also have the personal services cap. So merong limit ang use of the funds of local government units for salaries, and this is 45% for first to third municipalities and 55% for to sixth class municipalities. Dahil lalaki yung resources ng local government units, lalaki din yung capacity nila to hire more people, but should be limited to what is provided under the PS cap, which is 45 and 55%. The same, meron tayong provision on the 5% guard based on RA 9710, which is the Magna Carta of Women, that at least 5% of the annual budget of local government units, and not just local government, but all government agencies, national, local government, even GOCC, should be devoted for gender and development-related activities. And we also have the 5% Local Disaster Risk Management Fund under RA 10121, the Philippine Disaster Risk Management Act of 2010, which mandates allocation of no less than 5% of the annual budgets of government to support the disaster risk management activities. And also 1% for children under RA 9344, which is the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act, which mandates at least 1% of the annual ERA, or right now, the annual NTA of local government units to be used for the activities of the local council for the protection of children. Okay, next. On personal services, of course, further devolution of function, as mentioned by Director Aries, no, the LGUs will now have the primary responsibility in the delivery of the devolved function, as well as even absorbing some of the programs and projects of the national government agencies in support of this devolved function. So this will require them to expand their organizational structure and staffing pattern, as they may have to provide the structure and the manpower to undertake this additional work or the expanded devolved function. And with the increase of the ERA or the NTA allocation of local government units, the base amount for computing the 45 and 55% share will likewise increase, therefore giving the LGUs the opportunity to raise their PS spending. No? May policy ito na it's based on the second preceding year. Tama ba ako, Director Aries, na hindi based on the income nila today. For example, for 2022, the PS cap will still be pegged on the income of the LGU based on 2020 income. So therefore, hindi pa siya immediately mag-effect. So ang increase ng PS cap will affect in 2024. But then in the long run, that will allow them to hire more people to deliver the services that are mandated of local government units. We listed down here some of the laws assigning new functions and mandating new positions to local government units after the local government code. So meron na pong listahan naman ng mandated positions sa local government code, but these are some of the new laws, baka hindi pa namin capture lahat, that require additional responsibilities and hiring additional personnel for by local government units. For example, yung hiring of a local statistician under RA 11315, which is the community-based monitoring. And then hiring of a local population officer under EO 12 on attaining zero unmet needs for modern family planning. And the hiring of the local DRMO, ito ay isang buong opisina, no, composed of a minimum of 4 personnel. Under RA 10121 or the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010, the Youth Development Office under RA 10742, the Sangguniang Kabataan Act of 2015, a Local Cooperative Development Office under RA 11364, or the Cooperative Development Chapter of 2019, Local Emergency Call Center under EO 56, and BPLO, Business Permit and Licensing Office under 11032, although there are more, if not all, LGUs already have their BPLOs. These are not mandated position under the local government code, so it has to be a permanent position na. Then the tourism officer under RA 9593 or the local tourism or the Tourism Act of 2009. Okay, and maybe baka may nakalimutan pa kami sa inventory of those other mandated positions that LG should implement and carry out and hire based on the laws passed after the local government code. Okay, so in summary, the implication of the Supreme Court ruling, no, actually we're seeing 3, minsan 4. Una, more resources for local government unit service delivery. So the increase in ERA will help devolve basic services to local government units such as health, lalo na ngayon with the pandemic, agriculture, education, disaster management, peace and order, and a lot more. And the usual expectation, no, comes with greater resources, greater responsibility, and also expectation for better performance. No, when we mean better performance, it means that the services of our local government units should be responsive to the needs of their constituents, up to standards of service delivery by national government, so that people can actually experience comparable services, no, for far-flung areas, isang very urbanized LGU. And continuing, no, palagi ko wala nang bawian itong Supreme Court ruling, no, it now becomes part of the law. So from 2022, starting this year, thereafter, yun na yung share ng local government units. And then second, fewer resources for PPAs for national government agencies, but they will be required to do more of the oversight kasi the LGUs will now be implementing, and they have to ensure that the delivery of the services of local government units within each sector are actually at par with what is expected from national government. So the NGAs are expected to perform less of the implementation of the devolved function or the basic services, but more of the oversight function, concentrating on setting standards, the capacity, and even monitoring performance of our local government units. And the PPAs of national government agencies that encompass the roles and responsibility of the roles and service delivery function of local government units, as mentioned by Director Aries, even with the devolution in the 1990s, no, 1991, 1992 onwards, marami services are supported by national government programs. So with less resources for the national government programs in support of the devolved functions, will have to scale down and now to be fully devolved to local government units. And the third, greater demand for capacity building and supervision of local government units. So dahil mas malaki na ang resources that are to be spent, implemented by local government units, there is a need for more and sustained capacity building. This is to assure that the findings of World Bank, there is less efficient implementation of programs at the local level. So we have to address that gap. We have to capacitate our local government units so that the resources given them will be fully utilized for the services and of their constituencies and for local development. And then expanded oversight role for the ILG and national government agencies, as we have mentioned. Dapat hindi bitawan ng mga national government agencies ang pagsuporta sa local government units, much more that they have the resources within their jurisdiction. No, they should be properly guided as to how to deliver and the standards for each of the services. So the Department of Health should continue to supervise and assist, capacitate local government units, the DPWH on infrastructure development, DA for agriculture, so that LGUs can put to good use the resources that are given them. And then also we are expecting and exacting accountability from higher local government units, that they should exercise their oversight responsibilities over their component cities and municipalities, and cities and municipalities over their component barangay. So para meron ng channels of responsibility that provinces should oversee their cities and municipalities the same way that cities and municipalities should oversee their component barangays. Okay, so as mentioned by Director Aries, no, full devolution is measure of the national government to mitigate the fiscal impact of the Mandanas ruling. While there is no new functions that are devolved to local government units, ito pa rin yung the same list of functions as enumerated in Section 17 of the Local Government Code and the other laws that were passed after the Local Government Code, as we already have mentioned in the earlier slides. No, ito ang dapat na ini-implement pa rin ng local government units. Walang bago, kaalinsunod ng Mandanas ruling. However, as already mentioned also, the national government continued to support and provide for these services kasi in view of the lack of resources ng mga local government units. So now, with the Mandanas ruling, the LGU shall have to assume the primary responsibility for the devolved function services and facilities because they now have the resources to actually enable them to do so. And with that, we would just like to share with you some of the policies that has been issued. Some of this has been discussed by Director Aries already, starting of course with the executive order on the full devolution as with its implementing rules and regulation. The DILG DBM joint memorandum circulars on the preparation of the LG devolution transition plan, NGA's devolution transition plan, as well as the guidelines for personnel, policies, and actions affected by devolution. We also have issued the policy on the adoption of a capacity development framework, focusing on the capacity development for those needing local government units and less naman doon sa mga alam natin na can already be they can already parang implement on their own, no? Yung magagaling na nating local government and which can already serve as exemplars for all government units. We also have guidelines for developing capacities of local government units, yung pag-develop nila ng and requirement. Also a draft guidelines on the growth equity fund as discussed by Dr. Aries, and I will touch on also later. And also our guidance to national government agencies to coordinate with local government units as they prepare the devolution transition plan. Kasi po dapat seamless yung devolution transition plans of national and local government units. No? Kung ano yung hindi na-implement ni national, dapat ay ma-ensure na sasambutin ni local government units. And the same way, vice versa. As what happened no ngayon, mas nauna na ng peace ang local government units na bago pa yung local government bago ang national government. So dapat may mga adjustment na mangyari. So I will be discussing the policies or the guidelines in the formulation of the devolution transition plans of local government units. No, it is guided by the following principles. Kasama din ito sa mga diniscuss na Director Aries. Una, that the LGUs paulit-ulit are primarily responsible for providing direct service delivery to their responsibility and accountability and ensuring quality of the devolved services. And with that, mas marami sila ngayong dapat implement. The LGUs are expected to strengthen their capacities to exercise stewardship of their increased fiscal resources, enhance their organizational capacity for service delivery, and institute transparent, accountable, participatory mechanism to better achieve national and local development. Hindi lang local development, they should also contribute to national development objectives. And local government units are encouraged to establish robust partnership more than ever. Mas kailangan nila ito, no? With NGAs, private sector, NGOs, CSOs, POs, academic institutions, as providers of technical expertise, information, innovation, and governance model on service delivery. So the devolution transition plans of local government units is supposed to serve as the roadmap to ensure strategic perspective, systematic and coherent action towards full assumption. So dito nila ilalagay kung how are they going to assume the devolved function in the years within the transition period given them. Ano ba yung sa first year and second year and third year, how including the necessary capacity requirement and also the personnel and changes in organizational structure. Okay, second, the DTPs of local government units should be able to foster alignment of priorities and complementation of efforts and should influence the design of the devolution transition activities of the national government. So since nauna nakatapos ang local government units, we should now look into the DTPs of the LGUs and see ano yung kanilang support requirement in order to carry out the transitioning to full devolution. And the third, the DTPs can be used to leverage support from other governance stakeholders, our development partners, civil society organizations, and even private sector and cooperative undertakings during the devolution transition period and even beyond. And also the DTPs can be used to guide in monitoring and performance assessment of LGUs by the national government agencies, DBM and DILG. So what are the components of the LGUDT piece? Napasadahan na yata ni Director Aries to kanina, but isa-isahin natin, no? There are 6 components of the DTPs that the LGUs have prepared. Actually, kasi na-prepare na nila. Meron lang iba pang hindi pa nakakatapos. So, yung una is the state of devolved functions and service. Actually, this is just an inventory of the long list of the devolved functions to LGU based on Section 17 and the other laws. So, they will just have to check and see if they are already being performed by their respective local government units. So in a sense, this will just give us parang the state of devolution before the Mandanas ruling. The second component is the phasing of assumption of services. Ito na nila ilalag the services that they will expand, assume within the next 3 years. No? Sa first year, ano yung kanilang i-expand kasi hindi naman po kakayanin immediately all at once by 2022 lahat ng functions and programs ay ma-absorb lahat ng local government. So may phasing po yan dependent on their capacity, the needs of their constituents and the resources of the local government units. And then third is the capacity development agenda and requirements. This will actually list down ano yung kanilang capacity development requirements that needs to be where they need to be assisted along the different sector or even the fundamental aspect of the operation of the local governments. And then fourth, organizational structure and staffing pattern. So dito nila ilalagay if they will be changing additional or hiring additional personnel, changing the organizational structure for review and concurrence of DBM and Civil Service Commission for the guidance of DBM and Civil Service Commission kasi they should not exceed the BS cap and they should be following the position description and salary level as prescribed by DBM and the Civil Service Commission. And then the local revenue forecast and resource mobilization strategy, because of the decrease, the expected decrease in 2022 and 2024, we are encouraging local government units to maximize the revenue mobilization activities and revenue potentials at the local level. Though alam natin na hirap lahat ng local governments kasi ang kanila ding constituents ay nawala ng trabaho at nangangailangan ng support and even waiving of some of the fees, but they should look into the more sustainable revenue potentials within their localities. And they should also help their constituents recover so that they can increase collection from taxes, fees, and charges. And then yung last is the performance targets and for the devolved function services and facilities. So here, we're asking LGUs to determine ano yung kakayanin nila, ano yung kanilang mga performance targets so that they will have some parang aims or objectives as they perform their duties and responsibilities. And we hope that these targets will also be based or anchored on the existing national government performance assessment tools that are already available right now. For example, DILG, may Seal of Good Local Governance. Ang DBM, may PIFMAT o Public Financial Management Assessment Tool. Ang DOF, meron silang score ng bayan or yung Fiscal Sustainability Index. At marami pa yung mga national government agency like TTI, meron silang Competitiveness Index. I think DOH have the ORCID Award and a lot more. No? Okay, so ngayon, we would like to give you an update. Meron pa pala isa. Ito yung deadlines of the submission, timelines of the submission of the DTPs. Actually, tapos na, no? Ang barangay should already have submitted their DTPs October 13, ang cities and municipalities November 12, ang provinces, highly urbanized cities, and independent component cities and all NCR LGUs ay dapat nung December 12. And it should be submitted to DILG regional offices through a portal. And it will be used to harmonize capacity development intervention for local government units and also to be used by NGAs to align their assistance and capacity development to support the local government use, and to our other partners, no, pwede namang ibigay if they wish to support and assist our local governments. So right now, status of the submission for the barangays, 99% of the barangays are have already submitted their devolution transition plan. That is 39,069 out of the 42,000. So medyo kasi marami ang barangays, meron pa ring 1% na iniintay natin makatapos at makapag-submit. And then for municipalities and cities, we already have 90% of the DTPs of cities and municipalities. That is 1,332 out of the 1,400 plus or 500 plus kasi kasama ang cities and municipalities. And then for provinces, HUCs, ICCs, and NCR LGUs, 79%, no? Medyo malaki. Dito hindi pa sila nakakatapos, but the DILG, DBM, DOF, and other NGAs are assisting this remaining LGU so that they can complete and implement and start implementing their DTPs this year. Okay, so with those, the next slide, with those submitted DTPs, anong ginagawa ng DILG? These are actually available in a portal which we share with some other national government agencies kung kailangan nilang magkaroon ng analytics for certain areas na related to their concern. So right now, DILG is doing the quality assessment of the DTP submitted. This is to see if they have completed the submission of all the attachment forms, process compliance, meron ba silang structure, they go through this process, and content consistency. After that, we will be doing the analytics for the submitted forms included in each of the components. So for us to deliver or for us to determine the level of absorption of the devolved function, so that we can provide support to LGUs sa first year, ano ba yung kanilang inabsorb that they need assistance, second year and third year. And then yung capacity development requirements so that we can harmonize the NGA capacity development strategies for local government units. And then new additional staffing proposals of our local governments so that this can be reviewed by DBM and Civil Service Commission to determine if these are still within the PS cap or they are hiring the mandated position first before any other positions. And so that they can also be guided to the appropriate salary, grade, and position description of each of the new positions that are being proposed to be created by local government units. And then yung last, yung local revenue potential, no? So that this will give the national government ano yung parang somehow the expected level of revenues that local governments can actually generate by next year and the succeeding years. Okay, so next, after that, the DTPs, actually yung DTP should start implementation this year. And when we mean implementation, it should now be part of the plan that they are implementing, part of the budget, and activities that they are implementing already this year, because starting this year, every first month of the first quarter, tama ba, Director Aries, nakukuha na nila ang kanilang NTA. So by this time, they might already have the first quarter NTA in their coffers, which they will start using. So dapat they already have started to implement activities beyond what they have been implementing in the previous year, but expanded, including some of the PPAs or the programs of the national government. Okay, next. On the policies on convergence, as mentioned by Director Aries, as one of the provision under the EO. So we are encouraging, we have a system, di lang encouraging, we have a system for local government units to align with the national trust and priority. So we are, the DI
Excuse me, Director Anna, your microphone is off.
Okay.
Ayun, thank you po.
For this slide lang or hindi?
Yes po for this slide.
Sorry. And then also, so yan, and we're hoping that the CDPs, LDIPs, and AIPs of lower local government units are also the basis for coming up of the higher or the development of higher plans. For example, at the provincial level, the PDP-FP, Provincial Development fiscal plan, as well as their investment programs at paakyat hanggang sa national government. So meron tayong coherence and alignment of the activities from national to the local, to the local to the national. Hindi lang top bottom, bottom up pa rin. No, okay. And then at the LGU level, no, we are strengthening our guidelines to local government units on the harmonization of local planning, investment programming, resource mobilization, budgeting, expenditure management, and performance monitoring sa local levels in such a way that the plans of the local government units developed by the Local Development Council will be the basis for the investment program, as well as which will also be the basis for the budgets of local government units. So hindi lang basta nang galing kung saan yung budget nila, but it should come from the tedious planning that was conducted or implemented by the Local Development Planning Office as well as the Local Development Council. And itong proseso na to has been in place since 2016, and we're expanding, updating to include the new tools, the new policies of the oversight agencies to come into play into the entire PFM cycle of the local government units. When we mean PFM cycle, from local planning, investment programming, resource mobilization, budgeting, expenditure management, and performance monitoring. So this is a continuous cycle so that we can monitor the resources of local governments, saan nila ginamit, paano nila ginamit, etc. Okay, now, well, I have one slide on the GEF, as this was already discussed by Director Aries, that there is a growth equity fund as provided under the EO, and this has been legitimized by the current Government Appropriation Act for 2022. No, so there is a the GEF is intended to address the issues on marginalization and equal development and high poverty incidence and disparities in the net fiscal capacities of local government. So while nag-increase ang resources, alam natin that the ERA formula, or now the NTA formula, ay hindi equitable. No? Yung mga smaller LGUs na maliit pa rin ang resources to provide for their needs of their constituents. So ito yung ating parang support to those LGUs. The GEF is on top of the NTA. No? Hindi po to binawas, hindi to kinaltas, but this is on top of what they will be receiving, or the increase that they will be receiving. And the LGUs may use the GEF to implement priority projects to gradually enable them to the full and efficient implementation of the default function. There will be no menu of programs. It's the LGU that will decide on how to use this, but it should be guided by the DPPs that they have prepared. Under the GAA FY 2022 or RA 11639, there's an allocation of 1,250,000,000. Actually, lumit ito, no? The proposal of DBM was 10 billion. But nonetheless, ito yung ating i-share, ibibigay sa mga depressed local government units for them to catch up. And then lastly, on capacity development, alam natin, yun nga, as we mentioned, no, the LGUs are given the same responsibilities, no? Pare-pareho lang naman yung listahan ng devolved function for provinces, cities, municipalities, without regard kung ano ba yung kanyang condition and capacity, no? So in view of this, the department, the DILG, is proposing for the adoption of the LG performance capacity quadrants to classify LGUs according to the level of capacity and performance, using the seal of good local governance results as our proxy indicator. So this will hopefully help define the transition approaches that will respond to the distinct unique need of the LGU vis-a-vis the requirements of full devolution. So the LGUs will be segmentized and categorized to belong under each of the 4 quadrants to guide identification of the capacity development solutions for a specific LGU. For example, kung quadrant 1, ito yung high capacity, high performance LGU. So ang approach natin sa kanila is to evolve these LGUs have resources or can be used as good practice and innovation and exemplars of good local governance under full devolution. At baka hindi na nila kailangan masyado ng capacity development or trainings from DILs or other agencies. Yung quadrant 2 are those low capacity, high performance LGUs. And then quadrant 3 are the low capacity, low performance, and quadrant 4, high capacity, high performance. So dependent on the quadrant, in the next slide, dependent on the quadrant that the LGUs are, dito ipa-prioritize yung capacity development interventions and the priority for capacity building. So as we can see here, yung quadrant 3, which is low capacity, low performance, are the priority LGUs for capacity building. Sila yung priority 1 and they should be given full force of the capacity development interventions by DILs and other national government agencies, starting from the fundamental, including planning, investment programming, budgeting, implementation, M&E. Yung enabling, ito yung mga capacity building on resilience, peace and order, connectivity, area-wide concerns, completion, attainment of international commitments, etc. Sa developmental naman, these are the capacities to achieve specific sectoral priorities based on the devolved function. So ito na yung capacity nila on health services, or social services, agriculture, etc. So itong mga low capacity, low performing, ito dapat yung full ang support ng national government. And then, so that goes with the rest, no? Kung yung second priority is the second quadrant. Second priority is the second quadrant, kung saan yan, nakalagay ko ano yung extent of the capacity building for the fundamental enabling and development. So kung makita nyo, fourth, last priority, ang quadrant 1, ito na yung high capacity, high performing local government units. Baka kailangan lang nila ng konting updates on the different priorities of the national government. So this is our way of to be able to address the unique concerns, the unique need of each of the local government units. Alam natin, napakadami sila, no? So hindi namin kayang i-address lahat. But we would not like to give a capacity building of parang one for all LGUs. We would like that the capacity building given them are those that are required by them as they have indicated in their devolution transition plans. Okay, for my last slides, ways forward, no? These are the things that we are currently doing and will be doing in the future. We are continuing our assistance to the LGUs for the completion of DTPs, yung 21% na hindi pa nakakatapos. Then enhance communication and information campaign. Nabanggit ni Director Aries na we are heightening our information dissemination, not just to local government units, but to the constituents so that they will know where to secure services starting 2022 onwards. And then harmonize, strengthen capacities of LGUs on service delivery and NGAs on monitoring and coaching. So hindi lang po LGUs ang nag-a-adjust, pati ang national government. And then update policies and mechanism on strengthening planning, investment programming, budgeting linkage and M&E, updating of the framework for performance assessment of devolved functions. Currently, the DILG with the Seal of Good Local Governance Council members, na hindi lang po DILG but all member agencies are updating the indicators for the Seal of Good Governance to consider the expanded functions of local government units under this fully devolved setup. And then evaluate implementation of the transition to full devolution. We're doing this by year, starting with the analytics of the devolution transition plans that were submitted by the local government units, and they are starting implementation which they have started implementation this year. Then recommend legislation in support of full devolution. So marami pong necessary legislation that has to be passed to ensure smooth transition to full devolution. So I think that's the last of my slide. Marami pong salamat at magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Okay, ayun. So, thank you so much, Director Bonagua, for that informative discussion. We are sure to keep that in mind. And also, we are humbled and honored to have you, local governance part Teacher Colin. She's going to introduce someone to discuss about what you have said previously.
Thank you, Ms. Yalan. Thank you, Director Bonagua. Next up, we have another from PUP to share his insights on what Director Bonagua had discussed. He has a doctorate in public administration and a member of the faculty in PUP's College of Political Science and Public Administration, and also a planning officer and researcher in the Department of Science and Technology. Please welcome Dr. Alexander P. Gonzalez.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I would like to thank Director Ana Bonagua for that very informative discussion. And with regards to the Mandanas-Garcia ruling, so is it better to devolve? And I can still remember the statement shared to us by the late Senator Nene Pimentel, the father of our local government code. Sabi niya, if there is corruption in government, it is better to devolve it. Okay? So now we have it. As stated by Director Ana, at least 37, okay, 37% increase share of the national tax allotment. Now, she also shared that with this great, and if funds are power, then with great power comes great responsibility. But we should add that aside from giving greater responsibility, there should also be greater accountability for our local government officials. Okay. Now the takeaway for the sharing is we know that with more funds means more services to be delivered by our local government units. Okay, so mas marami tayong inaasahan na ibibigay ng ating mga local government. And as we all know, since this is local government, they can customize the services that they will provide. What do I mean by customization? That the local government knows the local issues and problems better than the national government. And they can provide faster response to these issues and problems. So doon malaki maitutulong nitong rulings na ito. Okay? And not to mention that it is easier to monitor the actions of the local government officials than the national. May joke nga na before na sabi ni Mayor daw na pagka nung siya tumakbo ay babawasan niya ang mahirap sa kanilang bayan. Okay? Dahil pagkatapos nung term niya, yumaman siya, o edi nabawasan nga kasi dati siyang mahirap tapos bigla siyang yumaman. Okay? Now, we can monitor this. Bakit? It is very easy. So rumors of irregularity leaks easier in local government. Okay? Or in the local than in the national government. Bakit? Kasi nga, personalized ito eh. Nakikita natin sila every day. Okay? So mas madali natin ma-check yung ating mga local government officials than our national government. And there's also this parang kumbaga it's a bit personal, okay? Dahil nga kilala natin sila personally. Okay? So it is easier for the citizens to coordinate with their local government units than the national government in terms of the provisions of programs, projects, and activities. Okay? So mas madali tayong itap ng ating local government. Okay nga, ano yung mga foreseeable issues that we can see or we can um, um, expect, okay, through this ruling. So nabanggit na naman ito that the capacity development should be looked into kasi there are a lot of local government officials that are not ready, okay, to accept this type of responsibilities. So nasa Metro Manila tayo, it's very easy sa atin na sabihin ready na sila. What, okay, about those who are in the provinces, ano, so yung medyo malayo sa Metro Manila, ready ba ang ating mga local government executives and local government officials? Next is accountability and monitoring. So nasabi ko na kanina that it is easier to monitor. Ano, yun nga lang, ang problema, it is on the part of the citizen, but on the part of the system of the national government, mas madaling mag-monitor ng centralized system than devolved system. Okay? So it is easier to monitor a centralized system kasi isang linya lang yung titingnan mo than in a devolved system. So yun yung checks and balances that's supposed to be established by the national government. Now, what else? So funding problems, nabanggit naman ito that we can expect that there will be funding problems posed by the pandemic by or at least starting 2023. So dapat i-anticipate ito ng ating mga local government and gumawa na ng paraan as early as 2022. Okay? So most local government structures are not yet ready to handle their new mandates and responsibilities. Okay? Bakit? Most of them are still relying on contractual and casual employees. So siguro dito malaki ang may tutulong ng DILG, malaki ang may tutulong ng DBM to look into their structures. Ano? So help the LGUs to reorganize and establish an efficient and effective organizational structure. Bakit? Pag titingnan natin yung ating mga local government, they are still relying dito sa mga contractual, casual employees. So ito yung mga hindi permanent. So ano ibig sabihin nun? Pag ganito yung structure, it's a highly political structure. Bakit? Pag alis ni Mayor, kasama kita. Or pag ayaw ka ni Mayor, alis ka na. Okay? So, but if you have a tenure, so alam mo that you have to stick to your mandate. Okay? You have to stick to your purpose as prescribed by law. Okay? So, yun yung ano natin dyan. Yun yung foreseeable issues natin because we give more power to the local government units. Okay? So, thank you very much to CPAGS for organizing this very important, okay, webinar. Okay, so that's all. Thank you.
Okay, ayun. So thank you so much, Dr. Alexander, for those illuminating insights. We'll be sure to keep that in mind. Thank you once again also to Director Ana Bonagua and Director John Aries Macaspac for taking part in our local governance forum. So, everyone, let us ready our pens and papers as our next speaker will dissect the best practices of good local governance, which is significant in molding our values and principles in the pursuit of a better governance. This is a very brilliant and interesting topic, especially to those of students of pre-law programs or simply to those who want to learn governance in a broader lens. She is the Executive Directress of Galing Pook Foundation, which is an organization that promotes innovation and excellence in governance. She also performed the duties of being the Vice Presidential Spokesperson and head of Angat Buhay, which is the Vice President's flagship anti-poverty program. She also served as the Director of the Sustainable Livelihood Program under the Department of Social Welfare and Development. Going deeper, she became a research program manager at the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative and also a member of the Ateneo de Manila University Loyola School's faculty. She graduated with a degree in AB Interdisciplinary Studies in 2007 and several years later obtained her Master's of Science in Social Development from Ateneo de Manila University. She also completed her mid-career Master's in Public Administration in 2019 at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Finally, let us welcome with gratitude and enthusiasm Miss Georgina and Hernandez-Yang.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the organizers of our event today. So to Director Ana Bonagua and Director Macaspac, our partners now from DBM and DILG, and of course to the students and school administrators. I do have a few slides. And I'll also be presenting a very short video to visualize this work of government units in searching for and documenting and promoting LGU best practices on innovation. And siguro maybe to connect with the previous discussions on Mandanas-Garcia ruling, actually the history of Galing Pook is that we started as an award-giving body in 1994. A few years after the enactment of the local government code, precisely because we think that LGUs will learn best from fellow LGUs. Mayors and governors will learn best from their fellow mayors and governors. And so that is really how Galing Pook Awards is designed. And our foundation works hard to search for these best practices, inspire and incentivize LGUs. Kumbaga, we know in the school setting, bawal ang kopyahan, but among LGUs where the work is very demanding and a lot needs to be responded to soon, we also promote sharing of best practices, or in short, ay kopyahan among our LGUs. As I mentioned, meron akong short video that I will be presenting, siguro kung okay ang internet. But congratulations also for mounting this event, Sipat, Susi at Siyasat. I'll play the video, tapos I'll have a few slides after.
Good governance is possible. Outstanding programs are replicable. And it starts with the recognition. This we believe. That's why in our 27 years of existence, Galing Pook has been proactively searching for innovative, adaptive, and excellent local government programs from all over the country. From Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, we are confident to say that the Philippines does not run out of good local government programs that are truly transformative and empowering. In fact, the past decades have been a witness to more than 300 outstanding and trailblazing LGU programs that created a positive impact in key areas such as environment, health and nutrition, education, livelihood, agriculture, culture and tourism, welfare and protective services, and disaster risk reduction and management. Every awards year, Galing Pook receives hundreds of entries coming from the different regions across the country, and a panel of esteemed judges rigorously selects the awardees, which are then publicly recognized in our prestigious awarding ceremonies.
The selection of 10 outstanding programs was very challenging, but throughout all the processes, I have personally seen a very credible system. The procedures were transparent and systematic. Na-realize ko, hindi pala ito bastang-basta na proseso. But the recognition given to us when we won the award in 2014 was crucial to our people. It was a validation of our efforts, and we know we were on the right track of transforming our communities.
Through these years, we have seen how Galing Pook awardees transform people's lives for the better. And we believe that as we face a more challenging world, there is a greater need to amplify these stories and build safe, smart, and sustainable communities. Safe communities are able to prevent illnesses and mortalities through universal healthcare, disaster mitigation, and peace-building programs. Smart communities utilize technology and data to proactively and efficiently respond to people's needs. Sustainable communities have resilient development plans that minimize economic losses and physical damages when disasters and pandemics occur. At the heart of this is genuine care and concern for the welfare of the people, especially those who are vulnerable. With all these in mind, Galing Pook facilitates learning among local government units through the Adaptive and Innovative Leadership Program. Here, the network of Galing Pook awardees are invited so they could amplify their stories of success through talks and policy fora. This because we believe that governors and mayors learn best by listening to the experiences of their fellow local chief executives. With a huge task ahead, Galing Pook is committed to strengthen institutional partnerships so that we can create a wider and meaningful impact. Strategically engaging our new generation of leaders through #BagoTayo, a network of youth networks that amplifies our call for good governance and citizens' participation among the millennials and Gen Z.
Nakita ko po na parang yun yung naging venue for us na bago lang din po dito sa SK, sa organization po, na maganda pong venue sa amin na matuto kung ano po yung mga dapat po namin na gawin sa community.
Our vision of building safe, smart, and sustainable communities will only become possible if all sectors are involved. We need you, national government agencies, civil society organizations, academic institutions, private companies, and youth groups to pitch in. But most importantly, we continue to take our lead from local chief executives, especially among our Galing Pook awardees, to show that 3S can be achieved through adaptive innovations. Together, let us innovate, solve problems, and make a difference. Together, let us believe that we could build a safe, smart, and sustainable society, one community after another. Sama-sama nating itaguyod ang mga ligtas, matalino, at matatag na mga pook. Sama-sama tayo dito sa Galing Pook.
So hopefully that gave you a good bird's eye view of different local government units' best practices that we promote and recognize through the Galing Pook Awards. So I mentioned earlier yung ang genesis. It was launched in 1993. Our first awards was in 1994. And from the beginning, our partner is the DILG through the Local Government Academy, supported by different academic institutions, NGOs, and government. And really, our goal is to provide incentives for innovation and citizens' participation so that LGUs capacities would be increased, especially because of the need for capacitation and retooling, reskilling of our LGU officials and staff. Throughout the years of searching for the local government best practices, we've really categorized into three. We're seeing a trend wherein LGUs are able to innovate best when they have excellent leaders, so accountable leadership. And a lot really relies on the vision, the effectiveness, the political will, as well as the competence of the local chief executives and their core leadership teams. We've also seen the design wherein the programs need to be responsive to the needs of the constituency. And finally, the importance of empowered citizens. We've seen that programs that have very limited participation from communities and stakeholders are difficult to sustain, or sometimes are not responsive to the local contexts and needs. So parang yung ingredient for effective and efficient LGU programs we've seen through the years is the need for accountable leadership, effective programs, and empowered citizens. So when we look for these best practices, of course, we look for verifiable data and evidence through positive results and impact, and we put a high premium on that. We also look for institutionalized mechanisms for promotion of people's participation and empowerment, including the establishment of people's councils, which the DILG also mandates and promotes among LGUs, wherein different sectors, different people's organizations, and NGOs from the community are represented in the planning, decision-making, monitoring, and evaluation of LGU programs. Third is the value that we put on innovation. And this is really defined as the ability of our leaders and their teams to see problems from different perspectives, approach the problem, developing interventions that are different from what has been done in the past. So always looking for new and fresh ways of approaching systemic problems that has been there for a long time. The fourth is transferability and sustainability. One of the questions we always ask is this replicable, at least within the city, kung limited pa yung scope niya within the city or municipality? Is this replicable in other provinces as well or in other regions? And is it sustainable based on climate change contexts, on natural calamities and disasters, as well as political transitions in leadership? Yung sustainability ng programs that goes beyond the administration of one elected official. And we also look at efficiency of program service delivery, where we look into yung pinaka-cost-benefit analysis for the budgets, the expenditure that government invests vis-a-vis the results that the programs reap. And the results that we're looking at in terms of the search for LGU best practices is, as I mentioned, data and evidence driven. So we, if it's an economic related program, we look at increase in family income, if it's livelihood, no, yung savings, reduced costs for beneficiaries. For example, there are some programs that join us that link farmers to market. So through infrastructure development programs, mas nagiging mura ba yung transportation costs, economic mainstreaming, entrepreneurial orientation, resource generation, and management. We also have programs or LG best practices related to social, cultural, and gender equity impact along the lines of health, peace and order, basic utilities, and education. Improved status and participation of women is also very important, as well as promotion of cultural heritage and pride and environmental impact. So that's it for yung positive results and impact. Yung people's participation, I think I mentioned earlier, no, the importance of strengthening people's councils and community-based structures, even having cooperatives that will sustain the programs after the support of government. Kung mga cooperatives o microfinance, looking at capacity build-up, partnerships with different groups, so cross-sector collaboration, networking, and alliance building, gender responsiveness, promotion of equity, tapping of local capacities, indigenous capacities, values, and practices, and promotion of human rights, transparency, and respect for the rule of law. Ito na, I think nakwento ko na kanina what we really look for in terms of innovation, as well as transferability and sustainability. And finally, yung efficiency of program service delivery, wherein we look at cost effectiveness and different M&E or monitoring and evaluation systems, as well as counterparting or collaborating within the LGU across different programs or among the different partners and stakeholders that are present in the locality. I'll give two examples and then also share with you the list of the LGU best practices that we recognized last year, no, in 2021. This program is called Rising Up from the Mud. Some of you may still remember yung typhoon storm Sendong, or I think BOFA yung kanya international name. Typhoon storm Sendong happened a few years ago, and si Mayor Oca Moreno, when he assumed as mayor of Cagayan de Oro, instituted a program of people empowerment to engage a wide range of people's organizations, civil society organizations, even academe, faith-based and church-based organizations to take part in the rebuilding and rehabilitation process in Cagayan de Oro after Typhoon Sendong. And front and center of this program is people-driven programs, projects and activities, or PPAs. When we talked about kanina yung different plans or devolution transition plans for Mandanas, and our hope really in Galingpook and among our different partners is that the plans will also include the participation of CSOs and different partners and stakeholders in identifying the PPAs, the programs, projects, and activities that will be funded through the increased allocation that LGUs will receive. So nandiyan yung bottom-up budgeting. This is the program that sina Mayor Oca in Cagayan de Oro did using the BUB budget through national government agency, additional funding. Then yung CSOs identified yung people's agenda, and this resulted to strengthen barangay participation. So hindi lang sa city level yung participation and consultation, pero binaba nila even at the community level among the barangays. And then engaging also the local government unit actors through a initiative nila na Prime Hat, and then increase yung kanilang transparency, and mas na-enable or nakapacitate yung different government agencies to identify and implement programs that are responsive to the community's needs. And may mga information, also the numbers that they presented, as a result, talagang nag-increase yung CSOs or civil society organizations that they have accredited. From 2, naging 53, and then yearly ay nag-increase yung kanilang number of accredited CSOs that are participating in their People's Council as well as in their City Poverty Reduction Action Team, which still exists even until today. And then may mga required na mga local special bodies or LSBs, but then they went beyond yung requirement ng kanilang, they went beyond and even created their own and established also partnerships with different organizations, conducted a series of consultations with communities in different sectors, and development plans were crafted from the barangay. And they institutionalized this through a structure that you see on the screen right now, involving iba't ibang mga departments within their LGU. And I'm sharing this kasi it's an innovation in a sense, kasi ito yung naisip ni Mayor Oca as a strategy for really fast-tracking and pursuing effective rehabilitation plans after the typhoon, wherein limited yung funds, very challenging din yung political situation, and yet he was able to push for the much needed programs at the right time by expanding yung participation ng iba't ibang mga sector in their local government units. So this was the solution that he found to the challenges that they encountered in their locality. This other one is from Kauswagan, Lanao del Norte. It's called From Arms to Farms. And this really is a story of sustainable peace and development program. A lot of livelihood programs, reintegration programs have been implemented by government, mainly pushed by our national government. This one, led by Mayor Arnado, pinagsama-sama niya yung iba't ibang mga programa ng national government and really engaged yung former rebels into the implementation of different national government programs. So it has different components, yung Arms to Farms. First is capacitating rebel returnees or former rebels, and then giving access to credit through microfinancing, pero hindi rin nagtatapos sa pagbibigay ng loan assistance or credit, but it also included product marketing or ensuring yung sustainability ng kanilang mga enterprises. And then yung kanilang sustainability and scaling up efforts, It included equity financing from program participants. So yung ownership and buy-in din nung mga program participants was increased by giving them more role and responsibility in the project. They also pursued mga local ordinances and ensured budget as well through their annual investment plan. Peer monitoring of other similarly situated municipalities. Yung nangyari dito, yung replication niya talaga is the LGU leadership together with the program participants, mainly the leaders of former rebel organizations, participated in the promotion and replication in nearby areas. So parang mas nag-increase din yung kanilang pride in the accomplishment that they were able to achieve in their community. And as a result, so it decreased yung kanilang poverty, so mas mababa na, mas konti na yung registered as poor in their area. The productivity and income of rebel attorneys increased. Yung kinukwento na ang tingin ng mga program participants is they had a very active role in the success of the program as well as in pursuing peace and development in their area. At lalong-lalo na yung pride that they were also able to send their children to school. So yung result is now the most peaceful municipality, and tuloy-tuloy actually yung mga agricultural programs that are happening in Kauswagan. As I mentioned, syempre yung mga local government practices, sometimes it's limited in one area only. So we also actively advocate for the replication of different LGU best practices nationwide. So by engaging different national government agencies. So for example, yung EcoSavers program that won a Galing Po Award in 2007, we actively worked with DNR, DepEd, MMDA, and DILG to have a MOA to promote this in different areas with components such as integration of solid waste management concepts in the school curriculum, capability building for students, educator, and the community, monitoring and evaluation of the program's impact, advocacy and networking with other stakeholders and service providers, including yung recyclers, as well as convergence and complementation with the National Deep Greening Program and sustainability. These are also some other program awardees that were replicated in other LGUs. And ito yung last year, we ran the Galing Po Awards, even though it was very challenging, and for the very first time, we had a purely online search assessment and awards process. And still we were able to recognize 10 outstanding local government programs with different categories. You'll see on the third column yung iba't ibang mga categories. And the LGUs ranges from a province, city, and municipality. In fact, the program is also open to barangay level best practices. And marami dito really are innovations that were implemented in the COVID-19 pandemic context, wherein LGUs were pushed to innovate and adapt their practices in order to respond to the new normal context. For example, yung sa Valenzuela City na Valenzuela Live. So as we know, yung distance learning is still being followed, pero they made it a live streaming kung saan mas interactive, and yung mga students are also able to engage better and learn better, and they have also the results to show the improvement in educational outcomes through their innovation. Our website, www.galingpook.org, has all of this information if you're interested, even in previous years. And you can also contact us if you have more questions on this, kasi medyo mahaba and baka maubos din yung time natin. But I wanted to process this with you. No? Of all of these, we have more than 300 documented LGU best practices. And the common theme that we've seen is that these programs promote safe, smart, and sustainable communities. And when we talk of safety, it's both in terms of public health as well as in terms of peace and security and development. So nandiyan yung universal healthcare, water and sanitation, food security, housing, and peace and order. Yung smart, nakita natin, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic context, the need to adapt and use technology in order to ensure continuity of service delivery, lalo na during lockdown. So, nandyan yung digitalization, teleworking, digital citizenship, technology-enabled programs. So many LGUs were kind of pushed or forced to transition to e-services dahil sa limited face-to-face transactions. And it became an opportunity for LGUs to upgrade their capacities as well and use more data-driven processes. And finally, on sustainability, the third S, is really ensuring continuity and even during the context of mga natural calamities, man-made calamities, and pandemics. So having resilient regions, self-contained neighborhoods, social interiors, smart buildings, and urban hubs, and resilient infrastructure. At paano to nangyayari? And we think that the 3S is really achieved through adaptive and innovative leadership. So nandiyan yung capacity of local chief executives, mayors, and governors to be able to lead the process of building safe, smart, and sustainable communities. And these are the different characteristics we've mapped out so far, no? That our leaders need to be responsive, agile, flexible, transparent, accountable, collaborative, forward-looking, efficient, resourceful, and empathic. And finally, it's really not enough na yung mga leaders lang yung kasali sa pagpaplano at pagtataguyod ng mga programa, kundi kasama rin yung mga ordinaryong mga Pilipino. So citizens as empowered load sharers na hindi lang bastang tumatanggap ng mga serbisyo ng pamahalaan, pero may bahagi sila doon sa buong proseso na ginagawa ng kanilang mga local government units. So and parang ito yung for more than 20 years of promoting adaptive, innovative, and efficient local government programs and services. We've kind of summed up the common themes that we've seen through the 3S framework through adaptive and innovative leadership. So that ends my brief sharing, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to share with you. Kasi sa totoo lang, a lot of people do not know about these LGU best practices, and we in Galing Pook are here to tell more people, especially the youth and the students, that there have been a lot of excellent LGU programs that really inspire us to take part in different efforts of our LGUs. So yun lang. Thank you very much and magandang hapon po.
Thank you so much, Ms. Georgina, for that compelling discussion of an efficient local governance. We are pleased to have
Oh, sorry for the technical difficulties. It seems as my partner has been encumbered by her internet. Thank you once again, Ms. Georgina. We are pleased to have you for today's webinar. And once again, thank you so much. Before we continue, oh, Carlin, are you there?
for today's webinar. Once again,
Hi,
thank
Carlin.
you so much. So before we continue,
Okay, ayun. So we'll get back to Carlin once her internet's fine. So before we continue, we would like to acknowledge the presence of our Zoom and FB Live participants. I hope all of you are doing fine and so far are enjoying and learning from our enlightening discussions. Thank you again for joining us today. Coming up next to share her insights on the discussion of Ms. Georgina. She is a freshman from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, studying Bachelor in Public Administration, and is the Deputy Secretary General in the Students' Rights and Welfare Philippines. Please welcome Miss Ella May Erana.
Hello, good afternoon po. I'll be giving my insights regarding sa naging explanation ni Ms. Georgina sa aking view bilang isang estudyante since, di ba, we had Mr. Alex, di ba? Ako naman, I'm going to give my insights as a student. So, okay, ang una kong napansin, benchmarking. Okay, I did a little bit of research regarding benchmarking. Okay, benchmarking, it is not a one-time event. It is actually a sustainable event katulad ng mayroon sa mga Galing Pook awardees at sa principles na meron ang Galing Pook. Hindi sila nag-establish ng project, activities, programs, events, etc. na hindi magiging sustainable for the long run. And then, mapapansin natin, no, na, okay, I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. This is my first time. Please bear with me, everyone. Okay, mapapansin natin na Galing Pook, hindi lang siya basta isang award. Galing Pook, nag-i-inspire siya. Okay, it gives incentives. Galing saan? Mula kanino yung mga inspirations na yon? Fellow mayors, LGUs. They're gathering inspirations to give insights sa mga individuals para ma-inspire sila and ma-experience din nila yung ganoong klaseng experience that would benefit the community. Na not only the LGU could do that, but maski ikaw, di ba? Non-government, government organization, civil society, even the academic institutions, we can all be part of it. We can be part of the sustainable change na meron at sinusulong ng Galing Pook. Adaptive, innovative, efficient. Hindi lang importante na may empathy ako, transparent ako. No, hindi pwedeng ganon. Dapat lahat ng under mo. Di ba, katulad ng nasabi ni Miss Georgina, it's like, hindi pwedeng ikaw lang. Dapat lahat kayo in order to benefit more people, in order to inspire more people. And then, siguro the last one na lang, no? Okay. Katulad ng nasabi ko kanina, benchmarking. It is not a one-time event. In order for you to maintain that goal na gusto mo to help other people, you should do a continuous research. You should analyze. You should check if magiging sustainable ba to, magiging beneficial ba to in the long run. Katulad ng naging program sa CDO, ay nakalimutan ko ang apelyido ni Mayor, pero sa CDO siya. I'm sorry, Miss Georgina. 'Di ba? Hindi siya isang beses lang na event. Hanggang ngayon, nakakatulong pa rin siya sa mga tao. So, yeah, I guess that's it, no? Yun yung insights ko as a student. Okay.
Thank you so much, Miss Ella, for your wonderful insights. Thank you once again, Mr. Gina, for sharing and discussing with us the best practices for local youth governance. As what Ella had mentioned, very inspiring and motivating. It gives us hope that we can create a better future for us and the people around us. The youth plays a vital role not only in today's society, but as well as to the succeeding generations. In relation to what I have said, I am very excited to announce the next discussion concerning how to empower the empowered young leaders from the perspective of a local youth governance, which is relevant at this point of time in creating and fostering more and more competent young leaders like us. Our last guest speaker is the bright founder of a youth-led movement for good governance called GoodGov PH Incorporation, and also a co-founder of the local civic organization Sulong San Pablo. He was also a co-chairperson of the San Pablo City Youth Development Council. graduated with a bachelor's degree in public administration from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and is now taking up his Juris Doctor at the UP College of Law. He is also a part of the Youth-Led Leadership and Democracy, or the LEAD Fellowship, and took part as well in the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative, or the YC Lee Academic Fellowship for Civic Engagement, which is hosted by the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Without further ado, let's get ready to jot down on our notes as we capture the essence of our amazing conversation of youth empowerment. Let us all welcome Mr. Dexter Arvin E. Yang.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Can you hear me? Okay ba? Yung audio ko?
Yes,
So thank
sir. We
you.
can hear you po.
All right, thank you to our hosts, no, sorry, ano name? Si Fiala and Carlen, no, for the introduction. And ayun, I just want to say thank you for this invitation here today. I was actually listening in from the past speakers, and hi to Miss Joanne, no, one of our partners last year. Ang galing po, no. So yeah, again, thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited to share what I know and my experiences. Lalo na, I was also a public ad student. So hello sa mga public ad majors natin dyan. Sana okay pa kayo ngayong pandemic, no? Sana nasusurvive pa natin yung SEM. Pero nevertheless, it's very humbling to share what I've learned, and a lot of the things I'm doing right now, the reason I'm doing advocacy work, youth development work, and studying in law school is actually because of what I learned in public administration. So yun, I hope na ang dami pala natin today, around 200 plus tayo. No? So I hope you guys could listen in and maybe participate a little bit in some of the questions that I'll be asking throughout this talk. So yun, again, you can call me Dex. I'm the Executive Director of GoodGov PH. Here are the details of our organization. Again, GoodGov PH is a youth-led movement for good governance in the Philippines. Ang vision namin, good governance, hindi lang para sa mga nasa government, hindi lang para sa mga mayayaman at magagaling, no? Pero good governance para sa mga ordinaryong Pilipino na nararamdaman sa mga programa at polisiya nila, mabuting pamamahala para sa bayan. So over the past year, I just like to extend my gratitude kasi I know a lot of students here were also engaged in some of our activities the past year. Thank you for joining us and making impact together. We were able to engage more than 26,000 young people and train over 1,600 youth leaders last year. No? So many of our volunteers actually came from PUP, sila Bob and so on. No? So thank you for the effort. So, alam natin na magaling ang mga public ad students. So hopefully you get inspired to volunteer as well in many different organizations. So yun. With that, I guess na-introduce ko na yung sarili ko at yung GoodGov PH. Para hindi rin natin patagalin, I want to get to know our participants here today a bit, no? And I think the most relevant way to do that, so given the upcoming 2022 elections, is let's hear from young people. Ano ba yung perspective natin sa mga nangyayari sa Pilipinas? So yun, alam ko nanood tayo ng mga presidential interviews. So this time, paano kung kayo yung presidential candidate? No? Ano yung ipaglalaban mo? Ano yung plataforma na gusto mong i-forward sa darating na election? So you guys can just leave a chat and then just briefly introduce yourself. What year are you in? What course or what university are you in? And then just give us a quick one-liner. Ano yung pinaglalaban mo? Ano yung gusto mong ipaglaban sa darating na 2022 elections? So yeah, does everyone have access ba to chat functions? Dito ba yung hosts natin? Yeah, siguro bilang panimula, let's call on our hosts. Yes, so Miss Fiala and Miss Carlen, how would you answer this question? Sorry na na-recitation ko.
Na-recitation for Sir Dex. Grabe. Kala ko ba nag-chill lang ako dito. For a presidential candidate po. Ayun, si Carlen na din. Carlen, ikaw muna. Ay, joke. No spotlight. Oh my gosh. Sige. For presidential candidate po, if I was one, but Obviously, I'm not because I'm still a student. If I was a presidential candidate, I would advocate po for gender equality, for local youth empowerment. Ano pa ba? Medyo na-nervous ako, sir. Grabe.
Okay lang, kahit isa lang, no problem.
Sir, yun na nga po, sir. Yes.
Sige.
Also for what do you call this? Amplifying the voices of the marginalized and the oppressed. Ayun yung importante po, sir.
All right, so let's vote for Miss Fiala, no, for as president. So si Carlin, how about you? Kung ikaw ay presidential candidate, ano naman yung ipaglalaban mo?
Good day po. I would actually agree ako doon. Ang nauna kong naisip talaga yung sinabing latter part ni Miss Fiala, yung papakinggan yung mga boses ng masa. Kasi at the end of the day, we are serving for the people, for the public itself.
Ayan. I think
that would be all.
All right, thank you, Carlin, no, for your answer. And hopefully, si Mark citizen power management, IRA, no, honesty, accountability, and of course, good governance for a progressive country. So, no, those are really nice answers. I hope, no, dumami yung mga mag-chat sa baba. May paraffle daw yung PUP or no sa mga sasagot ng mga tanong na to. De, joke lang. So yeah, it's really nice to know that we have different perspectives and knowing that we have many different issues, you know, happening on a national level. No, so I just want to spotlight or magnify the issue of youth development in the Philippines. No, alam naman natin, no, it's a constitutional mandate for, you know, the country to support, you know, the development of young people, no, knowing their role in nation building and one day you know, fostering their growth kasi they will one day become, you know, the next leaders of our country, diba? And yet there are so many different issues na experience ng kabataan. Ako, I would know, pandemic ngayon, it's very hard to study, no, and hindi nga tayo pantay-pantay ng resources, so a lot of young people are marginalized, you know, just because of poor access to quality education, and so on. Marami nagtatrabaho na lang in order to support their families. You know? So these are a magnitude of different things that young people experience. And what's surprising is that this is something that's not new. No? It's been there ever since. Maraming mga issue ang mga kabataan na patuloy tinatry tugunan ng ating government. Diba? And I'd just like to share, no, if you're not aware, na, you know, these issues have been happening way back, and the country has been a pioneer, no, in a sense na 1970s pa lang nire-recognize na yung role ng kabataan, no. Back then wala pa tayong mga sangguniang kabataan, wala pa tayong SK, may kabataang barangay, no, na tinatawag, and the idea, no, it wasn't really implemented in a way perfectly, pero the idea was, you know, have these youth issues, so why not try having young people work on those issues? So eventually nag-evolve siya, no, after the Marcos dictatorship, nag-1987 constitution tayo, may local government code tayo, na nagkaroon tayo ng SK, where, you know, we elect young people to directly perform functions of government, diba? They are already part of local governance in itself. So, you know, every election cycle we elect around 200,000 youth leaders directly. And, you know, besides that, we have a very vibrant community of civil society organizations. So, ito yung mga youth-led organizations natin. So ito, yung nag-organize ng forum na to, yung mga participants natin coming from different student organizations, you are part of that bubble, you know, of civil society organizations. And, you know, the things that we're doing, the policies that we're proposing and lobbying, the activities na ino-organize natin, at the end of the day, it reflects youth participation. However, as I mentioned earlier, you know, these kinds of efforts or policies haven't been very perfect. No? Hindi sila super successful. And historically speaking, makikita natin na there are lots of, you know, issues on corruption. No, back then gusto nila i-abolish yung sangguniang kabataan kasi marami daw inactive, maraming incompetent, breeding ground siya ng political dynasty, no? So, kumbaga sabi nila, wala kang pag-asa maging bahagi ng SK kung hindi ka anak ni ganitong government official, ni ganitong mayor, ni ganitong congressman or barangay chairman, 'di ba? So, parang wala din sense. Nag-uubos tayo ng libo-libong pera for the same kinds of people. And fortunately, through the leadership of young people themselves as well, now we were able to pursue policy reforms. No, yung SK reform law, no, pinalakas niya yung sangguniang kabataan. It even has an anti-political dynasty provision to address those kinds of things. So yung mga issues na na-experience ng SK back then, in-address, no, through the SK reform law, tapos pinalawak pa. And later on, I will tell you how the space for young people to participate in local governance has rapidly expanded because of the SK reform law. Now, makikita natin yung ganitong issue sa sektor ng kabataan, hindi rin siya hiwalay sa issue ng sarili nating bayan, ng buong Pilipinas. And you will see in a recent report that was released by Transparency International, makikita nyo that the Philippines actually dropped, yung score natin nag-drop sa corruption perceptions index. So basically, this is a scorecard na taon-taon nilang ginagawa, and it says na kung you are yung 0 to 100 na score mo, 100 being sobrang clean mo, sobrang transparent mo, and 0 being highly corrupt, it would show kung nasaan yung bansa mo, kung are you in the scale of corruption or are you in the scale towards a more transparent and accountable governance. And we will see that the Philippines in 2021 actually dropped. So this is the lowest score that we've had in the past, in almost a decade, yung corruption. And corruption happens not just in the youth sector, dun sa SKs na na-mention ko kanina, but also in national and local government. Diba? So, it's not new. Yung issue on incompetence, on political dynasties, those happen also in the national level, also in the local level, even in the sector of youth participation in governance. So, parang alam naman natin ano ba yung epekto ng corruption, alam natin yung epekto ng incompetence, kasi tayo yung nakakaramdam nun. Alam natin na kapag kinukupit yung pera ng taong bayan, yung kalsada mo biglang ang pangit, 'di ba? Parang makikita mo na kapag kinukupit yung pera ng taong bayan, yung bridge na ginawa diyan parang ang bilis masira or ang bilis alam mo yun, parang substandard yung quality. Alam mo kapag incompetent yung government or yung governance kasi ang daming problema na paulit-ulit nangyayari. And so it's very difficult to say na there's only one solution to everything na kailangan ganito, kailangan ganyan. Kasi usually we demand those things from our national leaders, our local leaders. But the question that I want to ask you guys is, ano yung magagawa mo bilang isang kabataan para i-address yung mga issue na yun? Yung minention kanina, paano mo i-address yung poor access to quality education as a student or as a young person, diba? And at first, it might seem overwhelming, but you'll soon realize, and I will share with you, that there are a lot of things that we can actually do right now. And it really helps to have good youth governance. Ito yung advocacy na tinatry namin, o tinatry natin na i-share sa mga kapwa natin kabataan. Na yung good governance na hinahabol natin, yung good governance na lagi natin pinapangarap tuwing election, that's something that we can actually take up right now. It's something that we could actually champion and lead right now as students, as youth leaders, and as public ad majors. And so, let me share with you how we can champion good governance, good youth governance, yung good governance para sa kapwa natin kabataan na magagamit natin para sa buong bayan. So, yeah. As I mentioned earlier, the SK reform law actually expanded the space for us to participate. Number one, there's larger spaces for youth participation. It means hindi mo na kailangan ma-elect sa SK before you can actually participate. No, you can be part of the local youth development council. No, which means yung student organization mo, kapag registered ka sa government, sa local government unit mo, you can be part of this and you can help the SK in creating policies, no, or implementing programs in your city or municipality. And that's very useful for public ad majors. Diba? Number 2, it's oriented to sustainable development. We have what we call the local youth development plan. Basically, ayan yung plan of action ng kabataan sa city or municipality. And it's all categorized according to different centers of participation na kung titingnan nyo, actually reflects, no, the sustainable development goals. And of course, lastly, no, we have better youth empowerment mechanisms. Kasi, number 1, there's mandatory training. And number 2, there's financial independence. So yung budget ng kabataan, hindi na, ideally, hindi na siya restricted ng mas mga nakatatanda. No, the young people are empowered to lead using their own resources allotted to them by the government. And to assist them, meron tayong local youth development office na tinatawag. Basically, sila yung parts ng local government na tutulong sa pag-implement, sa pag-work on the technical matters. Kasi syempre, medyo bata pa tayo. Sila yung tutulong sa atin to address those technical matters and issues. So ito yung snapshot ng youth participation before the SK Reform Law and after the SK Reform Law. Dati, you have to get elected either in Congress, party list ka, or tumakbo kang congressman or congresswoman. Be elected in local government, konsehal, barangay kagawad, and so on. Or be part of the SK. Or you can also be part of the National Youth Parliament, which is done every 2 years, and it's very exclusive in a sense na they only choose around 3 to 5 youth leaders per region. So very exclusive. Number 2, if now that we have the SK Reform Law, you can be part of the LYDC, as I mentioned earlier. You can just be part of your youth or student organization. Kasi even if you're not part of the LYDC, pwede mo silang kausapin at i-engage. Because that's a right given to you by the SK Reform Law. And lastly, you can participate in the katipunan ng kabataan. So kahit wala kang org, gusto mo lang mag-participate sa barangay nyo, you actually have the power to work with young people and engage your SK officials. So I guess that's the ideal. It's the ideal way of seeing it. And these are our opportunities. The challenge is, paano natin papaganahin yung mga institutions na yan? So when I was an undergrad student, the SK Reform Law was passed in 2016, and it was only in 2018 when we elected young leaders. And my thesis as a public ad student was about youth participation. So we looked into the SK, and we realized the opportunity. For us to maximize youth development, we need to have a checklist. Gumagana ba? Nararamdaman ko ba yung SK natin? Gumagana ba yung LYDC natin? Gumagana ba yung LYDO natin? And if kahit isa dyan ay hindi gumagalaw or hindi gumagana, then that's a huge barrier to youth development and youth participation in the local level. So we have to, we have to take it upon ourselves to work with young people and make these institutions work. Kasi kung walang check yung mga bagay na yan, mahihirapan yung kabataan at hindi natin na ma-maximize yung fullest potential natin. So, yun, as you can see, much of what I've done over the past 3 years, I graduated in 2019, much of what we've done really is about activating these institutions. So, at first, we worked with SKs. We tried to train them about good governance, and then we started working with local youth development councils, capacitating them, trying to make them realize na they are the ones who should be holding SK officials accountable, especially in the federation level. Kasi sila yung parang people's council na counterpart ng youth natin in LGUs. And of course, the LYDOs themselves. Kasi sometimes, yung mga mayor natin, baka hindi nila priority bigyan ng pondo yan, and so on. So they find loopholes para on paper, may LYDO, pero in reality, wala naman talaga. Diba? So, yan. So, for us to maximize, recap, for us to maximize youth participation in local government, we have to check all these youth institutions. Okay? So question so far. No? May tanong ba? Okay pa ba kayo? Sige. Okay pa ba kayo dyan? Miss Fiala, Carlin? So kayo yung on-call, feedback,
Hello po, Sir Dex. Yes po. Okay, po
Okay,
kami.
sige. Sige. Kasi hindi ko alam kung naglalag ako eh. So pag nawawala kayo, hindi ko alam kung naririnig yung pa ako or hindi. Pero sige, okay. So I guess all good tayo so far. So with that, syempre, as I mentioned earlier, these are the ideal experiences given the SK reform law. Pero iba yung reality, iba yung nararanasan ng mga kabataan. And so through GoodGov PH, we started this series of consultations last year. We talked to different SKs, to different youth and student orgs, local youth development councils, and asked them, ano yung we consulted about the criteria, and then number 2, we also consulted about their experiences as young people. And we realized, wait, may rinig niyo ba yung manok kanina? Yan. Mute na lang po. Thank you. All right. So we realized that although there are many promises in the SK reform law, there are also many barriers to youth participation. So we looked at nagkaroon kami ng pestle analysis. So I think you'll tackle this sometime along in your project management siguro na course kung meron kayo doon. But we did this when I was an undergrad. Sa pestle analysis, you look at the political domain. So marami, ang number 1 issue nila, hindi sila sinusuportahan ng LGU nila. That's very surprising because SKs themselves are part of the LGU. Number 2, there's traditional politics. Economically speaking, inaccessible yung LGU resources and hindi sila marunong maging financially independent na SK. So natatakot sila kasi kapag financially independent sila, they are liable for whatever happens to their resources. So iniisip nila, wag na lang, di ako marunong baka makulong pa ako or baka makasuhan pa ako. So that defeats the promise of the SK reform law in the first place. Number 3, youth perceptions and expectations. Syempre, medyo demanding kasi tayo as young people. And that's normal. That's just asking for accountability. But at the same time, it also affects the mental health of our SKs as well. So it's very surprising pala that a lot of these people, they entered politics hopeful to make change, pero nape-pressure din pala sila ng kapwa nila kabataan to the point na the damage or parang nahihirapan sila mental health wise. So of course, other than that, may inactive pa rin and incompetent leaders. Technologically, marami ang hindi capacitated for data governance programs, internet applications. In terms of environment, makita natin that there's also marginalization pala in youth participation. Usually, yung those in rural parts of LGUs, they have it a lot harder, in mobilizing young people, in creating projects and so on. Of course, legally, there's an absence of legislation that actually could help young people maximize themselves. So yung mga ordinances in local government as well as other reforms na hinahanap ng mga SKs right now, tulad nung compensation. Kasi ang kumikita lang sa SK ay yung chairperson. Pero very vital pa rin yung positions ng secretary pati treasurer kasi sila din yung pumipirma sa mga transactions ng SKs ng LGU. So natatakot sila na pipirma ako tas ako rin pala yung liable and so on. So they're looking for safeguards para sa isa't isa, kasi kaya sila natatakot. But at the same time, we can find that many enabling factors push young people to maximize youth participation. So, pag may support, pag may resources, and what's very surprising is having a shared identity. You will find that some of the most successful youth movements in the country right now are resulted in were a result of or a product of a shared identity. So imagine kung yung sa org nyo, di ba, we're very proud of our org. Because, alam, parang part yun ng identity ko di ba? Feel ko mas magaling kami compared sa ibang org, or like ito yung nagagawa namin all together. So imagine that, pero on a city or municipality level. May ganong sense of pride na taga ganitong city ako, at kabataan ako, leader kabataan ako ng city na to. And that pushes them, that empowers them because they know na that's their brand of leadership. So yeah, of course, social media and technology, it was very useful during the pandemic, having a youth space, and of course, legislation. So these kinds of things made us realize that there's so much more to youth participation than just policies. It really reflects the personal experiences of young people and the support given to them by other stakeholders and institutions. So when you engage, when you start engaging these people, you have to look into the humanity of our young leaders as well. Diba? So with that, yun yung realities it's not perfect, it's not the most ideal, but that's what's happening now. And so my question, guys, is anong magagawa nyo bilang isang public ad student? Or public ad major, or pol-sci ba kayo, or communication major ba kayo? Diba? Anong magagawa nyo bilang public ad student? So, yun. Guys, kung pwede kayong mag-chat, okay lang din. May prize sila Piala at Carlen sa inyo. Anyway, let me just share my personal experience. Back then, when I was an undergrad student, when I entered our college, CPAGS is a building in UP that's very far from the usual buildings of other college students. Medyo tago kami, nasa dulo kami ng campus. And whenever you enter CPAGS, you'll find this parang wall. And there's a quote there that mentions something about good governance or good government. Diba? So every day when you go there, makikita mo siya, and you'll always be reminded that, I'm a public ad student. And this is my goal, to work towards good governance or good government. But ako, as a Bibo kid, medyo BS org din kasi ako, I kept thinking, anong gagawa ko ngayon? Kasi parang lagi nila sinasabi, mag-aral ka, kompletuhin mo to, ayusin mo yung policy analysis subject mo, gumawa ka ng thesis mo, para ma-apply mo in the future. And I would always ask, ba't hindi pa ngayon? Diba? Anong pwede kong gawin ngayon? So, I realized throughout the past 3 years that as public ad majors, as college students, we already have our own stories to share. We already have knowledge we're building through our courses, and we already have experience that we build joining organizations by organizing projects like this. And I realized that I guess what was lacking back then during my time was that there wasn't really much of a push for us back then. And so that's the push that I want to give everyone today. Use your story, your knowledge, and your experience to build communities of good governance advocates, to change their mindsets para hindi na tayo mag-contemplate, hindi na tayo manatili sa nakasanayan. And number 3, let's use our story, our knowledge, and experience to strengthen our institutions. Para kapag gumraduate na tayo sa public ad, kapag gumraduate na tayo sa youth sector, tumanda na tayo, mananatili yung mga bagay na tinrabaho natin. And even more young people will be motivated to do the same things that you did. So, anong magagawa ko bilang public ad student? Yun yung tinanong ko sa sarili ko, kasama yung mga barkada ko nung undergrads kami. Ano magagawa natin bilang public ad student? And so we were lucky to have organized, we were chosen by the Dean to organize this summit. It's the Philippine Good Governance Summit in 2018. So share ko lang yan yung itsura ko nung payat pa ako. And then, doon ko nakita that we have many young people kasi kaka-elect lang ng mga STs niyan, and then they were proposing their initiatives for good governance. In a way, they were committing themselves kasi kakasimula lang ng term nila, they were committing themselves to good governance as young leaders. And I realized if we could share that same mindset and make a community out of it, then maybe more young people will take it upon themselves, make it a personal responsibility to practice and champion good governance. And so, after organizing that event, na-realize namin, pwede pa natin to ipagpatuloy. Pwede pa natin siya i-try ulit, di ba? And sakto, nag-intern kami sa isang academic institution that advocated for the sustainable development goals. And we pitched, pinropose namin na, sige, why not magpa-training tayo sa mga SK officials? And so we did that, di ba? So ito yun. And then it was very, it was very positive kasi very tangible yung gusto nilang mangyari eh. Kasi they had the context, they knew who their communities were, who they served, they knew their constituents. So it was very promising and we realized we wanted to do this. We wanted to continue doing this. So we started yung GoodGov. It's an organization. It really started out as a student organization. And then we managed to recruit older people who thought of the same things. Na-realize nila, uy, dapat matagal na natin to ginawa eh. So yun, ino-offer nila, we were able to recruit young people, young professionals, young lawyers. And we were very surprised kasi hindi pa nga kami graduate nung time na yun eh. Diba? But it's just because of that belief na public ad majors kami, BS org kami, pero feeling namin magagamit namin yung dalawa to get more people to join in this advocacy or this belief. So, and if you can see actually dito sa baba, some of them are PUP students ng 2019. Ewan kung graduate na sila. Kung nandito kayo ngayon, hello sa inyo. You were part of our story. So, yun, diba? So that's the challenge. Kung comms major ka, kung engineering major ka, how can you use your knowledge, your skills, for a better country? Diba? And so, it evolved. It evolved. Yung mga iniisip namin back then, it evolved to trying to expand and trying to reach more young people around the country. So we started in Quezon City, we expanded, and then the pandemic happened. So we were much more connected because everyone's online. Diba? And we wanted to share these principles. You can't have good governance. You can't make different stakeholders work together if you don't have participation, transparency, an inclusive governance. Hindi sila marunong, hindi sila effective, hindi responsive sa pangangailangan, hindi sustainable. And this is actually one of the programs that we're most proud of. And we actually worked with Ms. Joanne on this, with Galing Pook, yung Seal of Good Youth Governance. It's very much inspired by DILG's SGLG, pati yung Galing Pook Awards. But it really caters to young people. We want to recognize young people who practiced good governance, who exhibited good governance. We started in the province of Laguna and we were able to accredit over 40 out of 75. It means in-adopt nila yung mga practices. And back then, they didn't have an opportunity to do these things because wala silang training, wala silang capacity building. Our goal really is to increase the number of youth institutions that practice good governance. So it's not a competition na kailangan yung top 3 lang. For us, it's a competition of getting more winners. Kasi yun yung panalo sa kabataan. Kapag mas maraming magaling, mas panalo yung kabataan. Of course, improve the quality of youth governance. So yun, here are some examples. Many youth organizations took it upon themselves to become less exclusive and more inclusive. Back then, very stringent yung process nila, and now, they were recruiting volunteers to make more impact, to respond to community issues with more volunteers. Many of them have adopted yung mga FOI platforms or portals, mga transparency portals. So if you look at this, their Google Drive folders, it's updated. You can request information from them and they will respond to you within 5 to 7 days. And so on, diba? And it's not just SKs anymore. Even student organizations are doing it because they took it upon themselves. Na as a volunteer organization doing some form of public service, we are also accountable to the public. So wala silang tinatago. So imagine these are high school students, college students doing this. If kaya na nilang i-exhibit yun ngayon, if kaya na nilang mabuhay with transparency and accountability, that's something that they will take up with them as a value throughout their lives. We're very proud that many of the organizations adopted codes of conduct that committed themselves against discrimination, promoted gender equality, and a lot of SKs even started enacting resolutions and ordinances for that. So imagine in rural LGUs, which are very conservative, that's the reality, very conservative, a lot of LGU officials are. You will find young leaders proposing these kinds of solutions. Diba? And what's fun about that is good youth governance, the advocacy itself was integrated in the plans, in the budget of certain LGUs. And right now many many young people are lobbying for their own ordinances, which maximizes spaces for youth participation. So imagine these are high school students, college students doing these things. So what more, di ba, kung may kasama sila mga public ad majors na yun yung inaaral. So I guess that's a challenge. How can we reach out? How can we use our story, our knowledge, and our experience to build these communities and change mindsets, and of course, strengthen our institutions? Share mga awards na. Okay. So, yun, na-recap ko na yan. Okay, so I guess the main thing that I want you guys to take away, sorry kung medyo nag-overtime ata ako, is how can you take it upon yourselves to promote good governance as number one, a lifestyle, and number two, a personal responsibility. Diba? It means we do not want to wait for other people to get elected kasi tayo mismo, we take it upon ourselves to demand transparency, to demand accountability, to work on citizen participation, on sustainable development, on a more inclusive government, diba? And some of these screenshots actually were, reflections, and from some of our community members. Kasi they joined this Facebook group, tapos nakita nila, ito pala yung LGU response na nag-start yung pandemic. And they made it, it made them question themselves. May ganito ba kami? Ba't wala kaming ganito? Anong magagawa ko para magkaroon kami ng ganitong mga bagay? And that's something that Galing Pook, that GoodGov PH, that many student organizations are trying to do as well, by presenting what's best for the people and inspiring other people to work on having those kinds of things or initiatives as well. So yun, there's more. Another thing, and this was mentioned earlier, yung Mandanas ruling. This is a huge opportunity for young people kasi lalaki yung budget ng LGU, which means lalaki din yung budget for the youth. That would mean na more resources for programs, projects, and activities, but also more opportunities for youth and student organizations. It means kung naghahanap tayo ng partners, we can start working with our SKs, Kasi they have the resources, and if we work together, we can make more impact. However, there are also risks. That's patronage politics, mediocrity, and incompetence. Pag di sila marunong, sayang yung resources, di ba? Kapag malabo yung resources, kagulo na yan. And of course, graft and corruption. So I guess our responsibility is number one, register and activate our local youth development councils. Next is to update our local youth development plan as well as yung mga youth investment plans kasi lalaki yung budget eh. So we have to re-strategize. And of course, we have to monitor saan ba napupunta yung pondo para sa kabataan. What could help do that is encourage your SKs to get financial independence, to track the budget for youth development in your LGU, and have your own freedom of information ordinance or policy. That way, whenever you request sa LGU, they are mandated to give you the data or information that you need. So, itong youth organization, it could be a student org, it could be a church org, fraternity, a sorority. Anyone can be part of this as long as you're registered sa LGU. So with that, I guess to end, the real challenge is, again, paano natin tutulungan ng isa't isa na ibalik yung kapangyarihan at lakas sa mamamayan, sa kapwa natin mga Pilipino. Kasi the upcoming elections are coming up. No? So it's not enough that we voice out on social media. If you're fighting for a candidate, if you believe that this candidate could give you the best governance, no? You also have to take part in the process. Campaign for your candidates, no? Engage more people. Reach out to those who disagree and make them change their minds. And maybe if we get to elect the right people, when we when we lobby for our own reforms, when we try to engage government, they will be more responsive. Hindi nila tayo isasantabi. Diba? So ibalik natin yung kapangyarihan at lakas sa mga kapwa natin mamamayan. With that, let me end by inviting everyone to lead the community of good governance advocates. So I invite you to join the GoodGov page community. So nandiyan yung link. You can also join our Facebook group. No? So you can just search it on Facebook. And even better, if you want to lead a community of good governance advocates in your campus or area, we can help you form a GoodGov hub. So it will be an incubation program that will teach you more about good governance, local governance, and we will work with you in reaching out to your local communities. So you guys will be inspired, and you guys will take it upon yourselves to champion good governance. So with that, wag tayong matakot. Let's continue working together. Simulan na natin ng mabuting pamamahala para sa bayan. Yun lang, maraming salamat.
Okay, ayun. Thank you so much, Mr. Dexter Arvin Yang, for that enlightening and motivating discussion. As youths, we are the future of our country. There are things that we youths have seen that need to be updated and established for our future. We should listen, support, and amplify those who are being suppressed and ignored. Every bit of help counts. And what Sir Dex has said, we as the youth have to practice and promote good governance. Thank you again, Sir Dex. And last but not the least, to share his insights from what Mr. Dexter Arvin Yang had previously mentioned, hailing from San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, he is the Internal Vice President of the Public Administration Society, Aries Chapter, a youth leader and advocate for good governance and youth empowerment, the President and founder of the Unified Youth San Joseño and Laman ng Kabataang Musueño, the head of Ambagan PH Bulacan's Partnership/Membership Committee. Not only that, but he is the chairperson of the Health Committee in CSJ-DM Local Youth Development, a member of GoodGov PH, and was awarded Natatanging Kabataan ng Barangay Muzot sa paglilingkod sa pamayanan. Let us give a warm welcome to Mr. John Kenneth Yutatko.
I'm audible. Narinig po ba ako? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Syempre, hi, Dex, and so I am part of
John, medyo ganun yung internet mo. You became a robot. It's fine, we'll wait for you.
ng panahon na para tayong mga kabataan, ipakita namin yung pagkakaroon ng youth participation, hindi lang sa ating community, kundi sa ating bansa. No? So sabi nga sa SK Reform Law Act 2015, hindi lang mga kilala ang pwedeng pumasok doon na bilang maging isang SK, hindi lang ang mga kabataan na may mga political dynasty sa kanilang lugar, kundi tayo rin. No? So syempre, sa pagkakaroon ng youth participation ayon na sa ating 9th Center ng Local Youth Development, ay meron nga tayong yung tinatawag natin na health, active citizenship, good governance, and also at marami pang iba na kung saan sa pamamagitan nun, mas may papakita nating mga kabataan yung pagkakaroon natin ng participation sa ating nation building. Kasi nga, mahalaga tayo. Kung gusto natin ng pagbabago, yun nga sabi, kung ibigay natin ng buo, no? Kung tayo nag-aaral pa lang, kung tayo ay nasa bahay lang, kung tayo ay nakaupo lang, bakit hindi natin gawin yung panahon na tumayo tayo at gawin natin yung mabuting pamamahala sa sarili nating community. Marami tayong pwedeng gawin. Marami tayong pwedeng pangarapin, hindi lang sa sarili kundi pati sa ating pamayanan. So, sa pamamagitan nga nun, dito sa amin sa City of San Jose del Monte, ang aming youth code ay first reading na siya. So, I hope na makapasa ang aming, dahil meron na rin kami comprehensive ng aming Local Youth Development Council na nung nakapasa noong nakaraang taon. Sa pamamagitan ng aming SK Federation, lahat ng Sangguniang Kabataan, youth-led organization na pinagsama-sama para makabuo kami ng Local Youth Development Council. And as of now, sa pagpapatuloy namin ay bumubuo na kami ng Local Youth Development Plan sa aming City of San Jose del Monte na kapag pagkakaroon dahil na nga rin sa Mandanas ruling na pagtataas ng pondo ng mga sangguniang kabataan. Isa rin kami sa nag-check ng transparency and accountability ng aming mga sangguniang kabataan. Pinapasa sa amin lahat ng report. And we will check and balances lahat ng nagiging projects and implementation nila sa mga ginagawa nilang projects. Tayong mga kabataan, kaya natin kahit nag-aaral pa lang tayo. Sabi nga sa GoodGov PH, sa mabuting pamamahala, kailangan na tayong mga kabataan kasi tayo yung mga susunod na henerasyon. At sa ganun, mas makita natin yung diwa ng pakikilahok ng mga kabataan. Sana tayong mga kabataan, sabi nga ni Kuya Dexter, isa tayo sa paraan kasi eto na eh, narito na yung mga batas na Local Youth Development Council, Local Youth Development Office na makakatulong sa atin, National Youth Commission, Sangguniang Kabataan at Katipunan ng Kabataan na isa sa pinakamahalaga sa bawat barangay na dapat meron yung mga bawat barangay at pati yung ating mga provincial. So ngayon sa amin, marami kaming proyektong mga nagagawa sa tulong ng Sangguniang Kabataan at sa tulong na rin ng aming city government dito sa City of San Jose del Monte. At doon talaga na ipapakita namin kung paano nagkakaroon ng tunay na pagkakaroon ng voluntaryong kabataan na kahit nag-aaral kami, nakaupo lang kami, may nagagawa kami. Sabi nga, makialam, alamin natin lahat ng sitwasyon hindi lang sa loob ng bahay natin, kundi sa lahat ng paligid natin. At kapag nalaman natin yun, dapat kumilos tayo kasama yung mga kabataan na pwede natin makasama. Kasi hindi tayo nag-iisa. Kasi nga sabi nga, sa lakbay na ito, hindi ka nag-iisa. Yun lamang po at maraming salamat.
Thank you so much for those eye-opening insights. So once again, it is our pleasure to have you, Sir Dex and Mr. John. We learned a lot from you. As we end today's program, let us be reminded of some reasons why we are here in this event, which is to empower the students and all the participants to take civic actions, participate in governance, and promote good local youth development. So now, to formally end the event, may we call on Mr. Ernest Christian Villas for the closing remarks.
Hi, Ernest. Yes, we can hear you too.
Good afternoon, everyone. In behalf of Circle of Public Administration and Governance Student Executive Committee, we are extending our deepest thanks and congratulations for our attendees today. This event would not become possible without your presence. So we are very grateful for your time and efforts for being with us in this forum today. To our speakers, Director Aries Macaspac, Director Liza Bonagua, Miss Georgina Yang, Mr. Dexter Gonzalez, maraming pong salamat. To our reactors, Sir Kier, Dr. Gonzalez, Miss Irana, Mr. Yutato. Thank you po. To our faculty, Dean Antonio Sumali, PPA Chair Prof. Elmer Soriano, and to all professors here, maraming pong salamat. To our tech team, Ella and Andre, Aliyah, Ayla. To our executive committee headed by President Ana Hiramos. Media Management Committee headed by Ms. Maxi Martinez, and to our lively Masters of Ceremonies, Ms. Fiala Aquino and Ms. Carlen Lagaras. At syempre at sa ating lahat na nandito na noon at sa mga nanonood pa sa ating Facebook Live, maraming salamat po sa pagtalo. Anyways, many of us here are public administration majors, pol-sci, soc-sci majors, or other related courses and disciplines. As Dean O'Malley said in his inspirational speech earlier, Tayo ang mangunguna sa pagpapamulat sa bawat isa ng implikasyon ng mga bagay na ito. Yeah, of course, we want to learn, or your professor required you to do so, but it is more than that. It is because we need it. We care about it. We are the ones who will put these things on practice on the field. That is why we never stop learning even in this time of pandemic, where everyone is adjusting and unceasingly adjusting. Karamihan sa atin, ilang taon pa yung magiging party o opisyal na rin ng gobyerno. Practice na rin ito ng doctrine of government continuity or continuity in general that Ms. Georgina discussed earlier. We continue no matter what, no? Thus, we hope that you learn from the landmark case of Mandanas-Garcia ruling EO 183, full devolution, LGU best practices, and the youth local governance. At bagamat patapos na tayo, hindi sana dito matapos ang pagkatuto. We hope that this meaningful day become an eye-opener for our situation in the government and our society, and how we adapt and face these situations. At bago tayo maghiwa-hiwalay, muli maraming salamat at sa mga gusto makatanggap ng e-certificates, mangyaring sagutan lang ang registration forms na ito dyan sa comment sections at sa ating Facebook Live, nakapin sa ating comment section din. Maraming salamat sa pakikiisa at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Ayun. Thank you so much, Ernest. Guys, everyone, I have a request for all of us in the Zoom call to open their cameras as we will be having our photo op. Thank you.
So make sure to give us your sweetest smiles.
Ay, sino ba? Who na-take the picture? Ernest.
Si MMC dito, di ba? Max?
Hi, I'll do
Kaya ako na.
the MMC.
Sige.
Okay, we have
Yeah.
8 pages. First page muna. Count to 3, 1, 2.
Smile, guys.
Smile. Ay, wait, minute siya. Second page. Keep your smiles. 1, 2, 3, smile. Third page. One, two, three, smile. Fourth page. Fifth. Six. 7. Last page. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, CPAGS Tech team. One small reminder again for everyone. We have an evaluation form we would like you to all answer. It's right there in the CPAGS Facebook page, nakapin sa live. Thank you. And that is that. We would like to extend our deepest gratitude for the participation of Adarga, Christian Political Science Society, Alyansang Tapat sa Lasalista, Aktivista, and PUP Buklaran sa Psikolohiyang Pilipino. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful way to conclude the program. It has been an enlightening and eventful day with you all. Thank you.
I hope everyone enjoyed our webinar and the interesting topics that our guest speakers have discussed. This would surely be helpful for those who are planning to pursue any law-related occupations. The webinar Sipat, Suri, Siyasat, a local governance forum wouldn't have been possible without the partnership of Simula ng Laban at Kilos ng mga Sebastino, Public Administration Society, Aries Manila Chapter, and the PUP College of Political Science and Public Administration Student Council. So you may now leave the Zoom call. Sit back, relax, and get some well-deserved rest. Thank you all so much.
That's right, Carlin. I hope everyone not only enjoyed this event, but would also find opportunities in order to apply the knowledge they have learned today. Thank you so much to everyone who has made this event possible.